Union, South Carolina. They call it the City of Hospitality. A typical small town where neighbors know one another and life revolves around family and religion. Downtown, only 5 blocks long, is quiet on Sundays, except for the occasional passing train and the ringing of church bells. The nearby textile mills provide steady work for many Union residents. And 60 miles of highway and winding back roads isolate the town from the dangers of the nearest big city, Columbia. Around 3:30 p.m. on October 25th, 1994, Susan Vaughn Smith left the Conzo Products Company, a fabric trim and tassel manufacturer, where she worked as a secretary. She was upset. Her boyfriend, Tom Findley, the son of the company owner, had recently ended their relationship. At the time, Susan was separated from her husband, David, and had been dating Findley for a few months. The late afternoon air was beginning to chill as the 23-year-old Smith arrived at the daycare center to pick up her 2 young children, 3-year-old Michael and 14-month-old Alex. Unable to get thoughts of her boyfriend out of her head, she stopped at a tavern on her way home, where she sat in the parking lot, talking to a friend from work. She then returned to the office with her kids, hoping to patch things up with Tom. Her efforts failed. At around 6 p.m., Smith finally arrived at her small house on the northern edge of town. After making the boys a dinner of pizza, Susan called her friend at the tavern to see if Tom Findley was there, and if he had mentioned her name. He was, but he had not. Between 7:30 and 8 p.m., Smith strapped her 2 sons into their car seats in the back of her 1990 Mazda Protege. She would later say she thought a drive through the countryside might help clear her head. That she stopped at Walmart to do some shopping, and then got back into the car, intending to drive to a friend's house, but she never made it there. According to the story Smith would later tell, she was stopped at a traffic light behind the Monarch Mill textile plant, 2 miles from quiet Main Street, where a black man broke into her car with a gun in hand. "Drive or I'll kill you," Susan would later report the man as saying. Panicked, Smith said she did as she was told. They drove east on Highway 49, she said, away from downtown Union, the gun pressed against her ribs, the boys crying in the back seat. After about 10 minutes, they reached the access road to John D. Long Lake. Susan said the man abruptly told her to stop the car and get out, then stuck the gun to her side. Smith said she pleaded frantically for her children, but the black man pushed her out of the car and drove off with Michael and Alex. She ran to the nearest house, sobbing and crying for help. The family called 911.
Did he have any weapons, gun, anything?
He's got a gun.
Got a gun?
Yes, ma'am.
Within minutes, Union Sheriff Howard Wells was on the scene. He immediately notified the FBI and the South Carolina Law Enforcement Division, known as SLED, a highly trained state police investigative unit. They dispatched agents to Union to assist the sheriff in the search for the alleged carjacker. Soon after, the boy's father, David Smith, rushed to Susan's side.
When I got there, she was hysterical. I had to literally pick her up off the floor and take her into the other room and sit down with her on the couch.
Later that night, David called his father.
I said, "She ain't holding the bumper." I would have, they wouldn't have drove off with my kids. I was something when that car would have still been in my hand and he drove off, But there was never any doubt, in his mind that the kids were kidnapped.
I believed Susan. As I've stated before, 100%, completely. Never beyond that I didn't believe her beyond a shadow of a doubt, never.
David, like most people in Union, believed Susan Smith's story. By the next morning, word of the kidnapping had spread rapidly. Many residents would dedicate countless hours to a 9-day search for Michael and Alex Smith. A search that would end not in the safe return of the boys, but in the exposure of a lie that would shock the nation.
On the surface, there was little reason to doubt Susan Smith's story. By all accounts, she was a dutiful and loving mother. In high school, she had been a member of the National Honor Society and was voted friendliest girl by her classmates. But as the search began for the two little boys, the image of their tearful mother pleading for their safe return turned into a sickening lie. Police would later learn that 5 days before the disappearance of her boys, Smith had said to a friend, "I wonder what life would be like if I didn't have kids."
From the moment Susan Smith reported her children missing, a nationwide search began for her car. In South Carolina, officials led by State Police Chief Robert Stewart began a parallel investigation, as is commonplace in cases of child abduction. They questioned both Susan and David Smith, while following up on other leads about the supposed black carjacker. One of the problems complicating the search was that the description Susan Smith had provided for the composite drawing of the carjacker was so generic, it raised suspicion.
Of course, it had to be acted on because you have children's lives at stake. But over a period of a couple of days, we had some real concerns with that and with the concerns if it was false that it would cause in the community. And we tried to be very careful how we acted on that in conducting interviews of subjects based on her description.
A reporter with WIS-TV in Columbia, South Carolina, Heather Hoops, drove to Union to cover the story.
Discussion started right away about that composite and how vague it was and how it described half the people in Columbia and should we use it and what should be done. And eventually we pulled it off the air.
But the search for the carjacker and the little boys went on, and the residents did their part. They assisted police by printing thousands of missing posters, distributing photos, tying yellow ribbons around mailboxes and telephone poles, and scouting wooded areas on horseback. Local and national media descended on Union and beamed the story around the world. Before long, Susan appeared with her husband David to make a tearful plea for the return of their children.
I can't sleep, I can't eat, I can't do anything but think about them. And I just want to hug them so bad and tell them I love them.
But doubts about Smith's sincerity grew rapidly. On the second day of the search, she took a lie detector test and failed. In an attempt to get a quick confession, police confronted Smith and accused her of being involved in the disappearance of Michael and Alex.
She immediately became belligerent, cursed the agent, and that was the end of it. So we knew she was the kind of person that we would have to very easily work into a confession. You couldn't intimidate her into it.
Nor could the authorities call off the search. Sheriff Wells, the FBI, and police kept on checking the hundreds of leads that came in every day. Susan and David Smith stayed with their families at the home of Susan's mother and stepfather, Linda and Beverly Russell, waiting anxiously for news.
It was very long days, waiting out at the Russells, watching people come in, watching people go. You're like on a roller coaster, up and down, because there's so much hearsay.
On the third day of the search, there seemed to be a breakthrough. A car matching the description of Susan's Mazda was spotted in North Carolina. But it was not her car. In vain, divers searched the waters of John D. Long Lake from the shoreline to 100 feet out. And the FBI searched Susan's house, but came up with nothing. After almost a week of silence, Susan and David Smith appeared before the television cameras once again.
I want to say to my babies that your mama loves you so much, and your daddy, this whole family's love you so much. And you guys have got to be strong, because you are, I just know, I just feel in my heart that you're okay, but you've got to take care of each other. And your mom and daddy are going to be right here waiting on you when you get home.
As the daily interrogations of Susan proceeded, police discovered inconsistencies in her story. The greeters at Walmart didn't remember seeing her on the night of October 25th. The friend Susan claimed she was going to visit wasn't even home that evening. And there were more.
She said there were no other cars in the intersection, no possible witnesses there, when in fact that light will only turn red for the direction she was traveling if there was cross traffic.
On day 8, Smith changed her written statement when police confronted her with new reasons why her version of the supposed abduction didn't add up.
It was like an elaborate chess match. She'd make a move, we'd make a move, until it finally got resolved.
The national media was now increasingly skeptical.
I would do live shots for stations around the country, and they were asking the question, well, hey, did they think the mom did it? It was a question that was on a lot of people's minds. Susan said things like, I loved them, I really did. Well, that's past tense. I mean, are they dead? Do you know something we don't?
On the 9th day of the search, Susan and David appeared on all 3 national network morning news programs, declaring their innocence and pleading for the return of Michael and Alex.
My first reaction is it hurts to know that that I would be accused or even thought that I would ever do anything to harm my children. As a mother, it's only a natural instinct to protect your children from any harm. And the hardest part of this whole ordeal is not knowing if your children are getting what they need to survive. And it hurt. It hurts real bad.
Later that morning, Susan met with police behind a local church at a recreation center. Smith, worn down by day after day of intensive interrogations and relentless media scrutiny, finally broke down. It was in this small windowless room at about 2 p.m. on Thursday, November 3rd, that a tearful Susan Smith begged Sheriff Wells for his gun. She told Wells her children were not all right and fell to the floor sobbing. She said that the car and the children were at the bottom of John D. Long Lake. Divers found the car 122 feet from the shore, upside down, under 18 feet of water. Through the murky darkness, the beam of a diver's flashlight illuminated a small hand pressed against the window. As the car was pulled from the water, the bodies of Michael and Alex were visible through the side windows.
Small 10 stars shine bright for a day. The moon lights up a watery grave. Woods move in the nighttime breeze that lives from the lake through the trees. On the night that defined my name, fantasy or monster, you say. Watch my boys ride the incline down, all for a paper gown. Long ago I used to be a little girl on my daddy's knee. Dreams lie like diamond rings, babies and pretty things. I watch my car
Katherine Massey Book Club, Context of White Supremacy, Gus T. Renegade, and for another broadcast, hopefully to share constructive information on the global system of white supremacy, information for non-white people, victims of white supremacy. Today's date, Friday, September 12, 2025, so I have been told. This is our second installment on Maria Eftimiades, The Sins of the Mother, the heartbreaking true story behind the Susan Smith murder case. Importantly, the song in the background, Carolyn Herring, white woman suspected racist. Her song, Ode to Susan Smith, if you will, Paper Gown. I thought that was important. I guess two quick reasons, probably many, but just two that I'll pinpoint. One, I included songs that were made for Mary Kay Letourneau. Okay? We heard a few of them, in fact. And then, now we've heard two songs already about Susan Smith. What songs did you hear? We heard Columbine songs too. What songs have you heard about, I don't know, Sandra Bland? Especially songs by a white person. Have you heard white people make songs to Sandra Bland, Trayvon Martin, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Rosa Parks? A number of white people made songs about child raping Mary Kay Letourneau and child killing Susan. Hey, Gus T. Renegade been broadcasting for 16 years. Any white person make an ode to Gus T? Moving forward. And even the name, because I said two, the other, Paper Gown. She did all this to get married as though we got some hint of feminism, sexism, and all post Susan Smith did all this waiting on a no-count man. Nah. We done heard all kinds of trifling and tacky arrangements. Hey, if you are looking for some dude or get disappointed by messing around with some white dude, hey, that ain't no reason to kill two white children. We got all these infertile white people and white birth, and you killing good, hard-earned white children. What is wrong with you? At minimum, be a good racist. Jesus. The audio segment that we heard before the song Paper Gown, that was from the A&E documentary. That's the U.S. television network. But they did like a hour documentary amongst many networks and Netflix and all the rest of it. Probably more content coming out as we speak. But many years ago, decades ago at this point, they did like an hour special A&E on the Susan Smith case. You heard some of the local folks talking about even the suspicions that were had immediately, and we heard some of that last week. Folks questioning, wait a minute, for that stoplight, same thing we heard in the audio segment, for that stoplight, it's got to be another car there, and is this legitimate? Like, really? Would it have been enough time for some, I don't like no niggers, but would Leroy have had enough time to do all, like, really? Anyway, you heard, now I played the audio of Steve Smith, Negro Jester, clowning last week talking about this case, but he raised the same point that you heard from David Smith's, that's Susan's, husband, partner, whatever. His dad was in the audio segment, Dave, and he said, man, she came in and said that Leroy done ran off with the car, carjacked her, and took the two children, and he said, man, you ain't got the bumper in your hand? The same thing Steve Smith said last night. Like, really? You didn't? I would have ran after that car until I didn't have feet. Like, what? Like, I don't, what? But he said, Dave said he believed her. He didn't, You heard from other even reporters saying, is this legit? Because, they got the sketch of Leroy, and this looked like any old Leroy. Really? Y'all don't, really? You give, and she not, master deceiver. They said it took 9 days for them to suss out what really happened. 9 days, people being out on horseback and searching in the woods, and 9 days. Money collected and all over TV. 9 days. In the midst of O.J. Simpson hysteria for 9 days. Black man, privileged, ran off with 2 white children. Maybe O.J. did that too. We're going to get to resume with the text. We're picking up in the middle of chapter 5, after David. I love you, Sugar Booger. I know you ain't lied about taking these children, Sugar Booger. That's what we're picking up at. The only other thing I will say is I cannot emphasize enough, I did not even connect the dots until we started reading the book last week. This is not the first time we have read about white women killing their own children. Devontae staring back at us the whole time, and for the record, Sierra, Abigail, Jeremiah, Devontae, Hannah, and Marquise say that all the time. It was 6 of them. Dang, can we get names for all 6? Yes. All 6 non-white victims of white supremacy throw away children staring back at us. You forgot about Mendocino County? No, we did not. Throw away children, indeed. O.J. Simpson as well. I cannot emphasize enough. Final point. O.J. hovering over all of this. His arrest in June of 1994. These events commencing in October of that same year, mere weeks after the Juice's public arrest. Super duper context. Maybe the Juice snuck out to South Carolina and did this too. Got them gloves, you know. We will get to it. The Sins of the Mother, picking up in the middle of chapter 5. Katherine Massey Book Club, context of white supremacy.
On the night that defined my name, fantasy or monster, you say. Watch my boys ride the incline down, all for a paper gown.
Despite the ups and downs in her marriage, by all accounts, Susan Smith was a devoted mother who adored her children and never raised her voice to them. Neighbors recall how Susan would play with the children in front of the house, pulling Michael in his red wagon. When she took Michael for his first haircut, Susan brought along a camcorder, filming the special event. She comforted him with kisses when he fussed, and after it was over, Susan got on her knees and collected the clipped locks in a small bag. Michael was especially attached to his mom. He held her hand tightly whenever they went out, and was often too shy to play with neighborhood children if his mother wasn't nearby. Friends and relatives recall how Susan took the children to have portraits made, handing out copies. After the babies was born, she always had pictures ready, said her cousin, Mary Hickson, in an interview with Union's radio station, WBCU. If you asked how her babies was, she could show you pictures. When her father-in-law worked at Walmart, Susan often brought Michael in to visit. Later, after Alex was born, she'd bring both children by Winn-Dixie several times a week to see their dad, even during their separations. David always took time out to play with the boys. They loved to climb around in the customer service office. Susan and David just so much enjoyed being with the children, said Mary Hickson. When the kids needed anything, to go to the doctor or anything, David was always there. No matter what kind of problem they were having, they always worked with the children. That was their goal. That's the one thing they didn't have a problem with. Now and then, Susan would stop in at a nearby clothing store in the same shopping center. She'd come in shopping with kids, recalled a young woman who worked in the store, and she'd always smile. It didn't matter who it was. She smiled. It was so natural for her. The sales clerk recalled how caring little Michael was toward his brother. If the baby cried, Michael would say, "It's going to be all right," she said. You'd see the babies walking along, holding hands. Susan also made sure the children were happy at their daycare. She arranged to take them to Judy and Carol Cathcart's gray shingle house at the end of a dead-end street in Buffalo, about 3 miles from home. Every morning, Susan shuffled the boys past the yellow "Beware of Kids" on the front door and kissed them goodbye. Michael and Alex loved to point to the cows in the fenced-in yard and to play with the other children on the outdoor swing set. On Sundays, Susan usually took her sons to church at Buffalo Methodist, attending the same service as her mother and stepfather. Throughout the service, little Alex stayed in the nursery, happily playing on the orange plastic slide. Michael, however, was old enough to attend the part of the service geared toward children. He would toddle down the aisle, past his mother and grandparents, and sit at Reverend Long's knee at the altar. He listened patiently as the minister gave the squirming children a brief lesson from the Bible. Wilma Brawley took care of Michael and Alex in the church nursery. She, too, recalled Susan as a loving mother. "They loved her, and she loved them back," said Wilma on WBCU. "Any time they cried, if we couldn't get 'em hushed, we'd go get the mother. She'd come right in. The children would stop crying just the minute she walked in the door. She'd sit on the floor and play with them in the nursery, and they were just as happy as they could be. They just always wanted their mother with them." In the summer of 1994, Susan and David discussed the terms of divorce, and a few days before Alex's first birthday party, David moved out. He rented a 2-bedroom apartment in the white-shingled Lakeside Gardens complex, about 2 miles from the Tony Road house. He stopped in at Heilig Meyer's furniture store across from Winn-Dixie, where his brother-in-law Wallace Tucker worked, to buy furniture for his new place. David had taken a bedroom set from the Tony Road house, but needed a dinette for his apartment. David told Wallace he planned to fix a nice room for his sons. He set up a bed for Michael and a crib for Alex, and filled it with toys. On September 21st, 1994, Susan's attorney, Thomas White, served David with legal papers, asking for the divorce on the grounds of adultery. The complaint read, "During the course of this marriage, defendant has carried on, and continues to carry on, an adulterous relationship with a paramour known to plaintiff. Due to this behavior and other irreconcilable differences, the parties herein separated, and have continued to live apart." Susan was given sole custody of Michael and Alexander, with David receiving liberal visitation as long as he gave Susan 48 hours' notice. Previously, Susan had complained that David had a habit of simply showing up at the house, and she didn't like it. David agreed to pay Susan $115.04 per week in child support and pay health insurance coverage for the children at a cost of $112.58 per month. The couple agreed to split the children's medical or dental expenses not covered by health insurance. Susan and David had built no equity in the Tony Road house, but David agreed to give his interest in the home to Susan. In return, Susan was solely responsible for paying the $340 monthly mortgage. David also agreed to pay her attorney's fee of $290. David said he didn't mind paying because he wanted what was best for his kids, a friend of his said. He knew that Susan would never hold him out from seeing the kids. The separation appeared to be going smoothly. On weekends, David picked up the boys and took them to his apartment, where they colored or played with blocks. Sometimes he drove them to Veterans Park and let them feed the ducks. Occasionally, he went to the Tony Road house and mowed the grass. Michael loved to sit on his lap as they went up and down the lawn on a riding mower. A year before the breakup, Susan Smith took a job at Conso Products Company, a company that manufactures decorative trimmings. Conso employs 536 people in the city of Union. Susan was hired at $6.25 an hour to be the assistant to the executive secretary for J. Carey Finley, the president and CEO of the company. Susan's job kept her in touch with various merchants in town. She frequently called the local bed and breakfast, the Inn at Meriden, to set up reservations for out-of-town clients. She ordered flowers from Joyce Florist for clients and picked up meals and booked travel arrangements for Finley. Those in town who got to know her voice on the telephone say she was always soft-spoken and polite. J. Carey Finley, the former Charlotte managing partner for an accounting firm, bought Conso in 1986, along with a group of investors. Originally, they'd planned to revitalize the fledgling company for a quick resale, but Finley became fascinated by the business, bought out his partners in 1988, and moved to Union. He and his wife, Connie, bought a 50-acre estate about 7 miles south of Conso. In November 1993, Conso became Union County's first publicly owned corporation when it announced a public offering of its stock. By the end of the year, Finley had bought or opened factories in London, Canada, and Mexico, and reported export sales, non-existent 4 years ago, of $5 million. Susan enjoyed working for a powerful man in a prestigious company. Conso was exciting, and the opportunities seemed boundless. Something else happened at Conso. Susan Smith fell in love. Hard. The man she wanted was Tom Finley, one of 3 sons of J. Carey Finley. Tom, 27, had grown up in Mountain Brook, an upscale suburb of Birmingham, Alabama. He'd graduated from Auburn College in 1990 and then moved to Union to head up the graphic arts department of Conso. He designed and made brochures for the company. Tom was outgoing and popular, especially among the town's young women. The secretaries at his father's company referred to him as the catch. "Most of the young women in town are interested in Tom," said one local. "He's the town's most eligible bachelor. When women get attached to him, they can't let go." At some point during Susan and David's estrangement, Tom Finley asked Susan on a date. Over the next few months, they frequently met for lunch and took in several movies together. Susan visited him at his cottage on his father's estate and attended one of Tom's well-known hot tub parties. During the summer of 1994, Tom and Susan also both went to Conso's executive party. It seemed as if things might work out after all. By now, Susan and David appeared to have an amicable relationship. In early October, they attended Union's Agricultural County Fair, in a lot across the street from Winn-Dixie. As they strolled by the various exhibits, David carried Alex and Susan held Michael's hand. They bought lunch for the boys and chatted easily. That Sunday, the 4 of them went to church together. But Susan's dream of stability and love still eluded her. While Tom Finley liked Susan Smith, he swiftly began to feel that she was too possessive, too needy. As quickly as it had begun, the relationship was over. On October 18th, Tom Finley typed out a letter to Susan on his computer. In it, he told her that she was a great person and had a lot going for her. He encouraged her to continue her college education, and said he knew that someday she'd meet Mr. Right. Tom explained to her that he was not her Mr. Right, because he wasn't mature enough or responsible enough to take care of a wife and 2 children. At the end, Tom Finley told Susan that some guy would come along someday and make her happy. Susan received the letter 4 days after her divorce papers were filed in court. She was furious and let him know it. Tom was taken aback. Sweet, soft-spoken Susan? Tom Finley knew for sure he'd made the right decision. As for Susan, the rejections were mounting. On October 24th, a Monday night, Susan picked up her children from the Cathcarts and brought them to the home of her best friend, Donna Garner. Donna's parents babysat while Susan met with a professor at the University of South Carolina in Union. Around 7:30, she and Donna stopped in at the only bar in Union, Hickory Nuts. The bar had opened 4 months earlier and was a popular meeting spot for the town's young people. They played pool and ate chicken wings. On weekends, they would sing along with a karaoke machine. That night, when Susan and Donna arrived, Tom Finley was already seated at the bar, talking to two married women whom he had known for some time. One, in fact, was the wife of a good friend, a young man they were waiting for. Tom was well known at Hickory Nuts, stopping in after work 2 or 3 times a week. Susan and Donna Garner took seats a few stools away from Tom and his friends, and Susan ordered a beer. Still stung by their angry words of the previous week, Tom and Susan did not speak. When the bartender tallied up the tab, Tom told her to put Susan and Donna's drinks on his bill. Susan said nothing to him when she left, about half an hour later. That night, when Susan picked up her sons, Donna Garner's parents remembered how she dropped to her knees and played with little Alex, kissing and hugging him. The next day, Tuesday, October 25th, Susan joined a staff of 9 from Conso at lunch at Andy's in Buffalo. The group sat in the back room, pushing 2 tables together. Tom Finley had a turkey club platter and unsweetened iced tea. Susan ordered the grilled Italian chicken dinner, baked potato, steamed vegetables, and water. Although Tom and Susan sat next to each other, Susan was noticeably quiet throughout the meal and ate little. Everyone was laughing and talking, the waitress recalled, but Susan wasn't. When lunch was over, Susan paid the $50 bill with a company check, leaving an $8 tip. She returned to work shortly after 1 p.m., but by 3:30, she told a supervisor that she needed to leave early. She was near tears. She seemed very upset, the supervisor said later. I asked if she wanted to talk about it, and she said no, but maybe later. Susan left Conso and walked to the parking lot. She climbed in the Mazda Protégé and drove to pick up her sons. When Michael and Alex left the playroom for the last time, they waved goodbye to their babysitter, Judy Cathcart, and to the other children. See you tomorrow, someone said. 6. Most Union residents heard the news about the carjacking from William Christopher, the news director at Union's only radio station, WBCU, 1460 on the AM dial. The slim, deep-voiced, 35-year-old Carlisle resident had left his home around 5 a.m. that Wednesday, October 26th, driving the 10 miles to Union. He had heard a mention of a carjacking on the 11 p.m. local news the night before. Knowing that such an unlikely crime in peaceful Union would be the day's big story, he left a little early for work. On his way to the station, he stopped in at the Union City Police Station just before 5:30 for the latest news. The officer on duty gave him an update. Sheriff Wells and his deputies had called in the South Carolina Highway Patrol and officials from SLED. Dozens of men were searching the woods and area around John D. Long Lake, near the stretch of Highway 49, where Susan Smith said the carjacker had commandeered her Mazda. Before he left, Christopher picked up a composite drawing of the suspect. A police artist had met with Susan in the early morning hours, and using the description she provided, sketched out a rough draft of what the man looked like. Susan had described him as a black man, around 40 years old, wearing a dark cap, a dark shirt, jeans, and a plaid jacket. Christopher arrived at WBCU's offices just before the start of his 6 a.m. shift. Settling into his chair in the station's control booth, he told Union's early risers that a Union resident had been the victim of a carjacking on Highway 49, and that the woman's 2 young sons had been taken along with the car. Police were conducting a huge manhunt in the area, he said, and he encouraged residents to stop by the station to pick up a flyer with a composite of the suspect. By mid-morning, he'd handed out dozens of flyers. One of his listeners that morning was Dot Frost, Susan's neighbor. She had gotten up early to pick up her granddaughter from her daughter's house down the block. Her daughter, who also worked at Conso, was going on a business trip to Hickory, North Carolina, and Dot was to care for the child for a few hours in the morning until it was time to drop her at the babysitter's. Dot's daughter met her at the door. "Mama, that carjacking at Monarch? That's Susan," she said. "It's Susan's 2 little boys." Dot immediately thought of the outside light at Susan's house, still dark. "I knew something was wrong," she told her daughter. "Always. She always leaves the light on." Dot Frost thought of little Michael sitting on his dad's lap as he rode the lawnmower, and Alex, the baby, how he always smiled. Dot began to cry. On the other side of Union, Carlisle Henderson, 71, was also tuned in to William Christopher's broadcast. Henderson, too, worked for WBCU. For the last 8 years, he'd been hosting his own weekday and Sunday morning show, Carlisle Henderson's Gospel Hour, playing Christian music and leading listener prayers. As he heard about the carjacking and Susan Smith's missing boys, Carlisle called to his wife, Georgia, to come and listen. The couple took in the news in amazement. Their granddaughter, Jennifer, was a good friend of both Susan and David, and Georgia Henderson had grown up with Linda Russell's mother, Eulalia, Susan's grandmother. Their son, Tommy, had once worked for Bev Russell at the appliance store. Now and then, Carlisle bumped into Susan and the children at Walmart or Winn-Dixie. "Boy, you're just as beautiful as your mother," Carlisle would say, then add teasingly, "And these kids. Why, I'm going to take those kids and run with them." He remembered how Susan would laugh. A sweet, sweet young lady, he always thought. Later that morning, as Carlisle Henderson's Gospel Hour went on the air, the 3 phone lines at WBCU lit up continuously. One by one, Union residents called in to ask for prayers for Michael and Alex Smith. That, in the face of tragedy, the people of Union should turn to God and each other is hardly surprising. If ever there was a community built on faith and fellowship, it is this tiny hamlet tucked in the foothills of the Blue Ridge Mountains in the Piedmont section of upstate South Carolina. The city and county of Union got its name from the old Union Church that stood not far from Monarch Mill, the spot where Susan claimed to have been carjacked. In its early days, the town was known as Unionville. Later, it was shortened to Union. The Union Church was home to 3 denominations, Methodist, Baptist, and Presbyterian, all of whom worshiped together at the same services. The first white settlers came to Union from Virginia in 1749, settling down between the Pacolet and Tiger Rivers and at Fairforest Creek. But the years between 1763 and the start of the Revolutionary War saw the greatest migration into Union County. Settlers built log cabins and planted tobacco, flax, corn, and wheat in the area's fertile soil. Union was one of the first towns settled in the area, and one of the few that escaped the bloody ravages of the Civil War. It stood untouched during Union General William Tecumseh Sherman's bloody march to the sea, because the broad river flooded and turned the troops away, leaving intact the town's more than 24 stately antebellum homes. Some of them, including the inn at Meriden on the outskirts of downtown, are now open to the public as bed and breakfast establishments. Union County has a population of 30,337. The city of Union, the largest municipality, has a population of 9,836. Of those, 69.8% are white and 29.9% are black. Union County also includes several smaller communities, including Jonesville, Whitmire, Pacolet, Lockhart, Carlisle, and Buffalo. The towns are home to many industrial and manufacturing plants, providing employment to 13,180 people. A large portion of the county has been reserved as part of Sumter National Forest. The city of Union is known as the City of Hospitality. Signs boast the friendliness of its residents. On the water tower in town is a painted image of 2 hands clasped in a handshake. Hospitality, a tradition. People make a difference. And the community has also been known for its patriotism. In the early days of World War I, Union County won nationwide acclaim as the only county in the United States that did not have a military draft. because its draft quotas were filled by volunteers. Per capita income in the city of Union is $9,231. The median family income, $25,762,000, and median household income, $18,794. Union has a downtown district, 4 shopping centers, and a campus of the University of South Carolina. It also boasts South Carolina's first Carnegie Library and several historic public buildings and districts, including its 1823 jail, which is no longer used. It was designed by Robert Mills, a South Carolina native known for designing the Washington Monument. Across from the old jail is the headquarters of the Union County Sheriff's Department, where, in the early morning of October 26th, the day after the alleged carjacking, a massive manhunt was getting underway. At 8 a.m., the phone rang in Howard Wells's office. He picked it up on the first ring. "Sheriff Wells," he said. It was his wife, Wanda. She knew to make it quick. "I know you're probably busy, but I just want to know if you need anything or I can do anything for you," she said. "No," he said. "I'm fine." "Okay." A concerned Wanda hung up. She wondered if her husband had had anything to eat. Probably not. She knew when he was upset or involved in a case, he wouldn't eat or sleep. She never pushed him. It wouldn't make any difference anyway. Wanda drove to Union Federal Savings Bank, where she'd worked for 19 years. In recent years, she'd been promoted to Assistant Vice President and Director of Human Resources, and was given a small office in the back. As she walked in and said good morning to her coworkers, she heard them talking about Susan Smith and the carjacking. Suddenly, the name rang a bell. Wanda remembered seeing Susan and the children at Scotty and Wendy Vaughn's house, and also on occasion at the bank, where Susan had an account. Wanda Wells suddenly realized who Susan Smith was. "She's Wendy's sister-in-law," she thought. Across the street, Wanda's husband was working the phones. Gathering the manpower was critical at the start of an investigation. He handed his secretary, Michelle Peahuff, his scribbled notes from his late-night interview with Susan Smith and asked her to type it up as soon as possible. He knew the media would be asking for the copy of the report. When she was done, he reviewed it quickly. Atop the report, in the section labeled Comments, the dispatcher had written, "Caller stated there was a hysterical woman telling him a man jumped in her car at red light and took her children and car. 1990 Mazda Protege, burgundy in color, SC TAG GBK 167. Under complainant, Wells listed Shirley McLeod. In the section marked Victims was written, Susan V. Smith, 23, height 5 feet 3, 130 pounds, brown hair, brown eyes. Michael D. Smith, 3 feet tall, 30 pounds, brown hair, brown eyes. Alexander Smith, 2 feet, 4 inches, 25 pounds, hair, blonde, eyes, brown. 407 Tony Road. The Mazda Protege was listed as stolen, with a value of $6,500. On the second page of the report, under Narrative, Wells described the events Susan had related to him. The victim in this case states that a black man armed with a handgun entered her vehicle on Highway 49 while she was stopped at the stoplight at the intersection of Monarch Highway. He told her to drive northeast on Highway 49, just below the John D. Long Lake. He told her to stop and then ordered her to exit the vehicle at gunpoint. When she asked him about getting her children out, the subject said, "Don't have time. I won't hurt them." And then the subject proceeded northeast on Highway 49. Suspect, a black man, was wearing a dark-colored toboggan cap, a plaid jacket, red with blue or navy blue jeans, and a dark-colored shirt under the jacket. All Union County deputy sheriffs were notified immediately to begin searching. The South Carolina Highway Patrol was notified and sent 4 men. SLED was notified and sent 14 men and a helicopter. That afternoon, Wells asked SLED agents to take a statement from Shirley and Rick McLeod. The agents showed up at the McLeod home shortly after the family returned from work. They asked questions about Susan's arrival the previous night, and about what she had told them before Sheriff Wells arrived. "Do you remember what she was wearing?" a SLED agent asked. Rick Jr. said he did. "Light blue jeans, white tennis shoes, white socks, a white t-shirt, and a white sweatshirt with orange letters. Do you remember what it had written on it?" He thought a moment. "Clemson." "You sure about that?" Rick Jr. nodded. 99% sure. It's Clemson." "You sure?" "What about Auburn?" Rick Jr. shook his head. "Clemson." The SLED agent hid a smile. The university named on Susan's sweatshirt had been Auburn. That afternoon, Margaret Frierson was at her desk at the Adam Walsh Center, an organization for missing children in Columbia, South Carolina, about 70 miles south of Union, when a reporter from Channel 4 in Greenville phoned. "What are the statistics of carjackings involving children?" the reporter asked. Margaret told the reporter that he should call Hugh Munn, the public information director of SLED. She gave him the number and then quickly called Munn herself. She usually liked to warn Munn when he should expect a call from the media. As the phone rang, Margaret wondered about the reporter's request. What was going on? It was Munn who told Margaret about the carjacking and the disappearance of Michael and Alex Smith. He said that she would likely be getting a call from the family very soon. A short time later, she did. Wendy Vaughn, Susan's sister-in-law, sounded hesitant on the phone, unsure of what she wanted. "I know I need to call you," she began. "We need some help." Margaret knew the stress involved in missing children cases. The South Carolina office of the Adam Walsh Center was one of such 4 organizations that grew out of the July 1981 disappearance of 6-year-old Adam Walsh from a Florida department store. Adam had gone to a Sears store in Hollywood, Florida, with his mother, Reve, to return an item. As they passed the electronics department, Adam pleaded with his mother to allow him to stay and play with an Atari video game while she went to the sales counter. At first, Reve Walsh said no, it wasn't safe, but Adam promised he wouldn't stray, and his mother finally gave in. Reve was away just 3 minutes. When she returned, her son was gone. Adam Walsh was missing for 10 days. His disappearance sparked an intense hunt. His mutilated body was discovered 150 miles southwest of Hollywood. Police believe he had been tortured. Back then, there was no blueprint for law enforcement to follow, no computer lists of suspected child molesters, no clearinghouse for missing children, no way for one law enforcement agency to know what another was doing. His killer was never found. Spurred on by their grief, Adam's parents lobbied to change that. In 1984, in large part due to their efforts, Congress passed the Missing Children's Act, which organized a computerized system for sharing information and established 4 regional missing children centers in Columbia, Fort Lauderdale, New York, and Los Angeles. Their function is to help get the word out when a child is reported missing and to help support the family throughout the crisis. The first Adam Walsh Center opened in Fort Lauderdale in honor of the child whose murder sparked extraordinary change in federal laws. Margaret tried to put Wendy at ease. "Are you calling about the 2 small children in Union?" she asked. "I can take preliminary information from you, but I would need to speak to one of the parents." Wendy explained that Susan and David were with Sheriff Wells at the moment, but she promised to get a message to them. "I'll have someone call you back," she said. But Susan and David remained tied up with the police investigation, and eventually it was Beverly Russell who called Margaret back. The 2 talked for a few minutes, and Margaret told Beverly that she and her assistant, Charlotte Foster, would be in Union the next day. Beverly Russell gave Margaret the directions to his home and thanked her for her help. That night, Margaret and Charlotte stayed in the center's office until almost 8, arranging with SLED to pick up photos of Michael and Alex. They would be coordinating the printing of thousands of flyers bearing the boys' photos. It was their job to make sure the public knew of 2 little South Carolina boys whose parents wanted them home. It was almost 9 that Wednesday night when Sheriff Howard Wells pulled into the driveway of his home on Tony Road. He'd been gone for 36 hours. Wanda met him at the door. "Have you had anything to eat?" she asked. "Very little," Wells replied. "Do you want anything?" Wells shook his head. "No, I don't want anything," he said. "I'm just going to take a shower and shave and change clothes and go back to work." Wanda looked at her husband's worn face. "Howard, you need to get some rest," she said gently. Wells turned and looked directly at his wife. "No," he said firmly. "I need to find the children." Wanda Wells did not reply. She knew not to say more. The sheriff headed toward the back of the house, and a minute later, Wanda heard the water running. Half an hour later, he was gone. 7. Every morning, before they left for work, Shirley and Rick McLeod stood by their den window, looking out at Highway 49. It had become their ritual ever since Susan Smith arrived at their door. They'd stare out at the road and the trees by the turnoff to John D. Longlake, and Shirley would say the same words again and again. "Where are those kids? Where are those kids?" Her husband would put his arm around her. He had no answer. On Thursday morning, 2 days after Susan's story of the carjacking, Shirley woke before dawn and felt a growing sense of dread. The house was frigid, the winds outside blowing harder, stronger than they had since last winter. She turned to her husband, near tears. "It's so cold, Rick," she said. "Oh, God, those kids. I hope whoever has got them is taking care of them. I hope they're okay." A few miles away, the Russell household was teeming with activity. Susan and David had been staying with Bev and Linda Russell since the night of their son's disappearance. The 3-bedroom house was always jammed with people. David's father, Charles David Smith, and his wife Susan flew in from California. David's Uncle Doug and his wife arrived from Michigan. There were friends and cousins, ministers and neighbors. They slept on couches and in sleeping bags. Usually, the family slept in shifts, giving everyone a chance to get some rest. When the house became too jammed, friends and family spilled into the screened-in porch off the den. In the evenings, when the reporters had left their posts in the driveway, the family gathered in the carport, greeting visitors as they came up the walk. Church members and neighbors brought over enormous home-cooked meals to bolster the family as they kept up their vigil for the missing boys. Every day, Scotty Vaughn stopped in at a local restaurant and picked up a donated cooler of ice for sodas and juice. The families of Susan and David Smith tried to comfort each other, offering a shoulder and encouraging words, prayers. Every day, someone in the group would repeat the words that had become their mantra in the days since the disappearance. Stay hopeful, stay positive, and pray. Susan, it seemed, never spent a moment alone. Always, friends and family surrounded her. It was an odd change. The loneliness of her past was suddenly replaced by absolute love and support. Perhaps the horror of what she did was somehow muted in this atmosphere of sympathy and caring. David, though, reacted differently, wanting more often to be alone. He would slip into a back bedroom at the Russell home and close the door. The families respected his privacy. "You could tell when it got to him," a friend said. 2 days after the alleged carjacking, Margaret Frierson and Charlotte Foster from the Adam Walsh Center arrived at the Russell house. Susan and David had been told the women had worked with other families to find their missing children, but they didn't know what to expect. There were so many people in the house, they retired to a back bedroom to talk alone. Ordinarily, the women preferred to speak primarily to the parents of the children, But because the family was so close, they agreed to meet with Susan, David, Bev, Linda, and Scotty Vaughn. For 40 minutes, Margaret told the group about the center and what it does to help the parents of missing children. She explained that she and Charlotte could be the family's liaisons with the news media, arranging interviews and broadcasting pictures of the missing children and information about the crime. They would help arrange to have flyers printed up with photos of the boys and a police department sketch of the suspect, and would see that they were sent to missing children centers throughout the nation. At those centers, volunteers would distribute the flyers, blanketing their areas with information about the crime. If a video of the children were available, the women said, they would help produce a public service announcement and arrange to have it broadcast on national and cable television. They could also field offers from people who wanted to set up rewards for information leading to the return of the children. The family seemed overwhelmed by the woman's offer of assistance. Though Margaret and Charlotte had much more to talk to them about, Susan and David had to cut the conversation short. They were needed at the sheriff's office. Charlotte stayed behind at the Russell house, answering the phone, and Margaret followed the young Smith couple in her car. In the 6 years she had been executive director of the South Carolina chapter of the Adam Walsh Center, Margaret had worked with most of the sheriffs in the state's 46 counties. But Wells was relatively new on the job in Union County, and there hadn't before been a missing child case under his watch. Margaret knew it was important to advise the sheriff early on of the center's capabilities. Every bit of help might lead to the safe return of Michael and Alex. Outside Wells's office, the throng of reporters and camera crews was thick. They had begun arriving the day before, and by Thursday, the motels in town were booked solid. Satellite trucks lined Main Street. As Wells questioned Susan in his office, Margaret and SLED's Eddie Harris, a tall man with a neatly trimmed mustache, talked to David about making a plea for the safe return of the children on national television. Both Margaret and Harris believed that a nationally televised appeal could be instrumental in solving the boys' disappearance. But they both made one thing clear. David needed to make his own decision on what he planned to say. "You say what you're comfortable with. Don't try to say something because we tell you to say it," Margaret told him. "Speak from the heart." Margaret reassured him that he didn't need to worry about fending off questions from the media. "You don't have to answer any questions if you don't want to," she said. David nodded and swallowed hard. He was a little nervous, but he felt ready. He knew it was important to reach the greatest number of people. He wanted his boys back so badly, he would do anything to help find them. Margaret slipped outside and quickly counted the number of microphones and cameras. She figured it might help David to know what to expect. Wearing a blue sweatshirt and jeans, a solemn-looking David Smith met with the press for the first time on the steps of the Union County Sheriff's Department. "To whoever has our boys, we ask that you please don't hurt them and bring them back. We love them very much. I plead to the guide to please return our children to us safe and unharmed. Everywhere I look, I see their play toys and pictures. They are both wonderful children. I don't know how else to put it. And I can't imagine life without them." When he finished his appeal, David was escorted back inside the sheriff's office, and Eddie Harris turned to Margaret. "I think they want to hear something from you," he said. Margaret hesitated for just a moment. She was acquainted with most of the local reporters and camera crews, but she wasn't used to such national exposure. Still, she knew how important it was to speak out and talk about the Adam Walsh Center and its functions, and she, too, took her place before the cameras. It was the first step in what would become a massive media campaign to find the boys. Over the next 24 hours, Margaret Frierson and Charlotte Foster would work with W.I.S., a local Columbia NBC affiliate, to produce a 30-second public service announcement about the missing children. The evening before, Linda Russell had given them a video she had taken at little Alex's first birthday party 7 weeks earlier. On the tape, the boys played together and laughed. Susan was seen helping Alex unwrap his presents. Margaret wrote the script and had a WIS staffer supply the voiceover. She made sure it was supplied to all of NBC's stations and cable affiliates around the country. She sent photos and flyers in overnight mail packets to dozens of missing children centers, including the 3 other Adam Walsh groups and the Polly Class Foundation in Petaluma, California. She called paper companies to persuade them to donate paper to union businessman Mike Stevens, the owner of Stevens Printing Company on Highway 176. The day after the boys disappeared, Stevens had put all his orders on hold and devoted his presses to printing up more than 50,000 flyers with pictures of the Smith boys at no cost to the town or the family. The hours were arduous, the pressure intense. For the next week, Margaret and Charlotte were in Union every day, camped out at the dining room table in the Russell home. Charlotte often manned the phones, taking dozens of messages from well-wishers and reporters, while Margaret continued to spread word of the boys' disappearance. It was exhausting work, but the 2 women were dedicated to their cause. They had to be. The lives of children were at stake.
We are in Phoenix this morning, but across the country from here, the kidnapping of 2 little boys, 3-year-old Michael Smith and his 14-month-old brother Alex, has gripped the town of Union, South Carolina. From the beginning, on October 25th, their mother Susan has maintained that she was the victim of a carjack, that her sons were caught in the middle. Right now, we want to go to Union to get the story firsthand from Susan Smith and her husband David. Susan, how are you doing this morning?
Doing okay. Very little sleep last night, but I'm okay.
There was some news yesterday and some promising leads in this case. How are you coping with the disappointment of the news from yesterday?
I was running around my house yesterday morning all excited. I really thought that they had really found something that was, I really thought they had found one of my children, and when I got to the courthouse and found out that the lead had disintegrated or there was nothing there, I was very devastated, very disappointed. Got my hopes up and was let down, but I haven't given up hope. That was maybe one of many disappointments, but maybe the next going to be right.
David, where do you think your children are?
I have no idea.
Do you hold out hope that they're still alive?
Yes, we both do, very strongly.
This is going to be a little bit difficult to talk about, but even folks in Union wonder about the both of you. They wonder if all of the truth of this story has been told. Susan, what do you say to that?
I say that on my behalf, the truth has been told. I know right here what the truth is. I can see from their side why they have to do the things they have to do. But the Lord and myself both know the truth. I did not have anything to do with the abduction of my children. I don't think any parent could love their children any more than I do, and I'd never even think about ever doing anything that would harm them. And
Dave,
yes, go ahead.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Susan.
I was just going to say it's very painful to have the finger pointed at you when it's your children involved.
David, this is as equally a difficult question. Are you satisfied that that's true?
But what's true?
That Susan has told everything she knows?
Yes. I believe my wife totally.
Susan, we're led to believe that investigators spent quite a bit of time at your place yesterday. Is that true?
Yes, sir.
And what do you think they were looking for?
I have no idea. I granted them permission to search my house under the impression that was one of the normalities of the investigation. As far as what they were looking for, what they took, I have no knowledge of that.
David, the question that arises in people who have been following this so closely, and certainly you have to know how much emotion that this has generated across the country, is why someone who would be interested in carjacking or stealing a car would want to continue to take a couple of little kids with them. Have you been able to fathom that, or could you think of why someone would want to kidnap a couple of little kids unless there was some ransom or something involved?
No, I have no idea why the suspect why he even took the children and why he has not released them yet. We have no knowledge whatsoever.
Susan, what do you think?
I think it takes a very sick and emotionally unstable person to be able to take two beautiful children like that, to be able to keep them from their parents, to keep them from where they do belong. I can't imagine why anybody would want to do such a thing as what has happened.
David, what message do you have for folks around the country who are watching right now?
That the American people, that this nation, that they don't give up on Michael and Alex, that they continue to search for the vehicle, for the children, or for the suspect himself, and that they keep our family, me and my wife, and our family, but especially Michael and Alex, in their prayers, and keep searching until they are found.
David and Susan, we thank you so much for your time this morning.
You're very welcome.
Paula?
Mother Superior Susan Smith, race soldier extraordinaire. Talk about master deceiver. Go out on Good Morning America, any other platform. Cry on demand. Let me tell you how about Leroy and stole my children. Need me to cry? Where's my camera at? I'm ready. I got it. Got my Kleenex? Let's get it. What does it mean to be white? Susan Smith. Man. White people do not care about children. With that, the song Paper Gown, I neglected to include Susan Smith was already married. What you mean? All this about, Finley Jr. There's a cronyism there too. What you mean? I'm looking for a good husband. You already married. What's the song? What is it? Love the one you with. Remember that one? That's oldie, but remember that one? No. Or, hey, I don't need to kill no children just because old Finley, he don't want to go down now. He said he don't want no children. Get out of here, man. Get out of here. The number 720-716-7300. The code 564-943 pound. Press star 61 if you would like to participate. Number again, 720-716-7300. The code 564-943 pound. Press star 61 if you would like to participate. We're kind of midpoint of chapter 7, I reckon. Midpoint chapter 7. Let's see. That email, my apologies, untiljustice@gmail.com. untiljustice@gmail.com. If you have thoughts, observations to share. Let's see. If you recall, right, this was a popular case right in the middle of OJ. If folks remember all of this, this is another one. Ask your parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles. If you have neighbors that I guess are over, what shall I say? If they're over 40, they should remember this, I think. You can go and ask them, do you remember the white woman, South Carolina, she blamed it on Leroy. Do you remember? And just see, do they remember when it first happened and subsequent to trial, all that. See what they, just be curious. Let's see. We'll get the folks who dialed in first, *61, if you have thoughts on the first chunk of the reading. Folks who dialed in with a hand up, proceed. Let's see.
Thanks for unmuting me, Gus. I hope I can be heard okay. I hope everybody's doing the best they can tonight. I wasn't able to chime in last week on our part two of dastardly mamas, dastardly white mamas. First thing that really stuck out to me was the amount of time that was wasted from the beginning to the end. Just a lot of time, a lot of resources, a lot of other people's time that could have been using that on other things. So that's one of white people, racist white people. They like to waste time. So in the beginning, there was the clip from, I think it was the father of the children, maybe his dad, saying that, why the hell don't you still have the bumper? You should have held on. I'm a mom. And to think about somebody driving off with my babies in the back, I mean, come on, over my dead body, right? It was also said that she never said a bad or mean word to them. That just because she didn't say a bad or mean word to them, it doesn't mean that she really, had love in her heart for them. Susan is one of those ladies, and I could be wrong. She's one of those ladies where I'm so hurt. Somebody broke up with me. Oh, my God, life's over. And she'll also try to do this. Well, I'm going to try to get the guy to stay with me because I'm going to get pregnant. She strikes me as that type of woman. And if the man doesn't want her anymore, including the children, here you got Susan. I mean, you ran your babies into the lake. Adam Walsh, they went over that when he was found dismembered. I read a little bit about it. Adam Walsh found dismembered. He was kidnapped in 1981. I was just thinking, this made me think about the Atlantic child murders. Now they're saying that started in 1979 and went to 1981. If white people wanted to do something about this, wanted to make this of these children getting kidnapped or whatever, they could stop it if they wanted to. They could stop it. It could have been when the Atlanta child murders were going on. All the agencies could have worked together to put a stop to that. That's another thing that I wrote down. Law enforcement agencies not sharing information. And I think I heard maybe books ago where someone brought that up. It could have even been you, Gus, to where the sheriff department didn't know anything because the state police didn't tell them, and the state police didn't know anything because the FBI didn't tell them, and the FBI was confused because the CIA. So they'll just pass it on to the next person. Well, it's not our fault at the state police. It's the feds, man. They didn't give us enough info. So little stuff like that. Let me see. Oh, the main thing. If Susan was a better liar, I wonder if she would have got away with this. Being a better liar, maybe they would have found out, well, let's look in the lake and found the boys with the car and, the crazy black man, he must have drove them in the lake. I wonder if she was a better liar, she would have got away with this. And that's all I want to say for this reading. Thank you so much for letting me speak, and I'll mute my line.
It's possible. It is possible. I will say I had not heard of the Adam Walsh murder before. This is in People magazine, which talked about Susan Smith quite a bit. I didn't know about the connection to America's Most Wanted either, which, I mean, now, hey, that's neither here nor there. I think Michael Swango is on America's Most Wanted. Anyway, so I get through just to get to some of the important parts. So, okay. The Mr. Okay, here we go. 2 weeks after Adam disappeared, John and Reve, that's Adam's parents, flew to New York to appear on Good Morning America, just like Susan Smith, kind of. When they received horrifying news, Adam's severed head was discovered in a canal in Vero Beach, Florida, about 120 miles north of the mall where the boy first went missing, per Florida Today. And then they give more detail. I just want to give one other quick paragraph. I skipped about 3 paragraphs, same article. Some theories have emerged since. They did not ever find the rest of his remains, just the head. Some theories have emerged since. In March 2010, a report suggested that witnesses actually saw serial killer Jeffrey Dahmer and Adam on the day the boy went missing. While all of Dahmer's confirmed slayings took place in or near MKE, Milwaukee. Oh, my Lord and Jesus. Let's put a pin in Milwaukee. We'll get back to that. At the time of Adam's abduction, Dahmer was living in Miami Beach, about 20 miles from the Hollywood, Florida Mall, where Adam was last seen alive. The Miami Herald reported that Dahmer denied involvement in Adam's killings. Ooh. Can I give one? What did you learn? Give me one thing you learned specifically from taking the Jeffrey Dahmer tour in Milwaukee. I still got my Dahmer tour bracelet and Dahmer tour keychain because it's got a flashlight on it. Dahmer was accused or suspected, I'll say suspected, of other murders outside of Wisconsin. I didn't know about this case, but I knew about others. The white tour guide said one theory as to why Dahmer did not take credit, brag about some of these other killings, because they were in jurisdictions where they have the death penalty. Now, it might have changed, but hey, I know Florida. Ted Bundy, UW or alumnus, University of Washington, they have the death penalty in Florida, unless it's changed recently. But that might not be a case that you, or a state that you want to do a whole lot of messing around, killing children, because they might, just get to hang out in prison in Florida. I have to double check to make sure it's still the case, but isn't that something? I just learned about this, but if that is true, and they have lots of articles linking this and, talking about this, so if that is true, my suspicion, because we did read about Jay Dahmer, my suspicion would be he probably did this. Like, that is his M.O. totally. The beheading children. I don't know if there was something sexual involved. He was there during that time period. I think he was already actively involved in killing at that. That's everything about it. Can't find the rest of the remains. Everything about it sounds like Jeffrey Dahmer. And they say he was living right there. And even, give me something else that you learned going to Milwaukee. I told you so many people in Milwaukee knew Jeffrey Dahmer and Maxwell Anderson. I suspect that'd be the case if you go to Union for Susan Smith. One black female drove me to the courthouse for the Sade C. Robinson murder trial. She said, I used to work at the mall. We would go to the mall, and he would just be sitting there. Who was he? Jay Dahmer. He would just be sitting there. We used to call him a mall rat. He's just sitting at the mall. He's just sitting at the mall. He's just sitting at the mall. We just, man, that dude, he just loved to come out here and people watching on the, no. Here's Jeff Dahmer out there, delectable Negro. He out stalking prey. And I'm going to tell you, that sounds exactly like Dahmer. If something happened where this was a 6-year-old and he somehow got separated from his parent and outside, oh my God, Jeff, hey, are you lost? Oh, come here, Adam, I'll get you back. Come on, we'll get you. And boop. And no one would even be suspicious because that's a well-meaning white man. Might even think that that's Jeff Dahmer with his son. And they're, boop, before you even know it. All you ever find is a head. That's Jay. I have to look at the other, evidence and all the rest. Like, I just heard about this case, so I'm not an expert, but woo, that sounds exactly like somebody I know. M.K.E. We will return to M.K.E. It's hard to be a Negro male in Milwaukee. Jesus Christ. Other folks who dialed in with a hand up, proceed.
Greetings, Mr. Renegade, callers, listeners. Fred Douglas. I do remember this. I was in junior high school when this occurred, and I do recall my adult attempted family members discussing this, and they had doubts about this incident and about Susan Smith's the veracity of her claim. I do remember hearing a joke at the Negro barbershop I used to go to, and they said that a black man isn't going to take no white kids. He don't even want to take care of his own kids. Yuck, yuck, yuck. I guess also it's kind of concerning. I realize I have fit that description on several occasions of this black male that Susan Smith had described, and so that's kind of scary that the description could actually mean me, and I didn't do it. And also, one of the previous caller mentioned about if she was a better liar, and sometimes that doesn't even matter, depending on the demeanor of white people, because sometimes they know a white person is lying on a black person, typically a black male, and they don't care. There was a lynching of a young black male accused of killing his employer in a large town near where I live. And it was reported after the fact that the white people knew that the black male didn't do it, and that it was actually the son of the black male's employer who did it. So I guess it just depends on the voracious appetite of the white people at the time, whether they go and want to pursue some kind of justice, or they just want to kill a black person. This is from last week. I didn't get to call in, but I remember about the beauty standards there, and the way that Susan is described as beautiful and whatnot. And she doesn't fit the white beauty standards. I think that was mentioned. I mean, she's not thin, blonde. She's not really, I guess tall could be in there as well, but she's short, brown-haired, and not thin. And this whole case, you mentioned Swango, and it reminded me there was a guest you had on who talked about a dentist, Dr. Mastro Marino. Well, one of the things that guest mentioned was about a nurse who would cause a patient to code, and that would require a security guard to come to the room. and there was a security guard that this woman liked. And so she would cause a person to, be near death just so this man would come in and she'd get to spend time with him. And sometimes she would wear very lacy underwear to get his attention, and she'd climb in such a way on the patient so that he would see that. The props, that is a theme, from the last, Mary Kay used her kids as props. Those Halloween clothes, their costumes, even her mother did that with her kids. Then we had the hearts, they had the whole social media presence and, about their kids, and it seemed like they were so in touch with them and loved them, and the whole time they're starving and physically abusing them. So, that kind of, makes you question about, Susan Smith. She's presented this book by the author as such loving and caring, took them to church and got them photos at Sears or J.C. Penney's or wherever it was, and then the haircuts and keeping the curls, buying them clothes, taking the store or to Winn-Dixie, and they play blocks when they visit Dave. Some of the stuff is just things that parents do with their kids because you got to do something with them. What else you going to do with them? Kill them? And then, I guess, I was a little surprised that South Carolina's favorite sons have not yet been mentioned on the program. Pitchfork Ben Tillman and Strom Thurmond, particularly given the subject matter at hand, and then the political discussion last week about the Democrats and Republicans. Ben Tillman being that old Democrat, and then Strom Thurmond being the Democrat who became a Republican and kind of initiated that switch in the South from the overtly racist party switching from the Democrats to the Republicans. And then I guess also, talking about all these white people and white women in particular, talking about their abuse of white children, reminded me of that, the 14 words from David Blaine, White Supremacist. We must secure the existence of our people and a future for white children. And white people don't give a damn about that. So, but that's all I have. Thank you.
Much obliged, Mr. Douglas. I think many aspects of this book would suggest white people do not care about children. Even the inclusion of Adam Walsh. It's layers all the way through. Yes, that's, he said, well, maybe she could have even not been a great liar and still got away with it if white people just, Leroy got on our nerves and, whatever. We're going to go and mess over some black people, which, hey, I did hear some black, well, at least pause for Devontae. We did not forget. And absolutely, it said Susan Smith doing the prop thing, taking the pictures, and all the way we do the public appearances, much like Mary Kay, very much, and much like the Hearts, social media, and get Devontae to go out there on that corner and ask for a hug. There you go. Maybe we'll get you a sandwich afterwards. Maybe. We did not forget Mendocino County. White people do not care about children. Any hoodles. Let's see. Other folks who dialed in, if they have comment. But yeah, she wouldn't even have to be a good liar. That's what I was going to say. Man, they got interviews with privileged black males in Union, South Carolina. I told you about one we'll have to play, but there's a different one. Black male, you talk about time and energy wasted on all this. Our young lady who dialed in before, black male, he said, man, I was on my job. They came in and said, what Mr. Douglas said, you kind of fit the description. Let me see you with a toboggan. Up. Come on, Leroy. Come on. He said, I was on my job and they came and took me down to the station and Said, we want to talk to you about these missing children. He said, I was so embarrassed and humiliated in front of my coworkers. Psh, whatever, Leroy. like you had a reputation to begin with. What fella said, you don't even take care of your own children, you deadbeat rapist. Think you got some? I'm embarrassed. This ain't the first time you've been cuffed, Leroy. Talking about I'm embarrassed. They done came on my job to ask me about Susan Smith's children. Black male privilege. And then they followed that. They had a white woman. She said, now, this isn't a time to be angry. We just want to focus on these children. White people do not care about children. Leroy doesn't either, they say at the barbershop. Okay. Other folks who dialed in with a hand up, proceed.
Greetings, everyone.
Retired firefighter in Florida.
Yes, sir. The Walsh incident was popular to me because it was in the state of Florida, and so it was on the news for quite a while. And that's what. But I don't think it was nationally as much more popular than the Lindbergh kidnapping and murder. But it was popular in the state of Florida, and probably in a regional standpoint. This particular crime that we're reading about, to me, was covered by the O.J. Simpson incident. It really, O.J. Was very, very, a very popular person, let alone a black male. He was basically arranged in that way to be a very, very popular black male, even after he stopped playing football. This murder I have here, this murder was not, the murderer was not she wasn't smart. But law enforcement, basically, they followed her story, which is probably some sort of law enforcement procedure to do so. They followed her story at first, and I think based on what I listened to in the last part of the first reading, they're now doing their own investigation now, by going in that house and whatnot, and searching for things and whatnot, that sort of thing. They are going to go about with their own investigation instead of following the ridiculous stuff that she probably told them. Yes, it is true. Comedians make a living joking about black males. Do not want to take somebody else's children. And it gives my thought of mine. I don't know of any halfway sane mother that would leave an automobile because somebody is carjacking her, and her children are still in the car. That mother, in most cases, would suffer the consequences of getting killed along with those children before a mom just jumps out of the car and waves bye-bye to her children. I would understand that there are statistics of people who commit what type of person, including from a race standpoint, commit type of crimes, and that law enforcement probably observes. They may not act on it. Sometimes they do, and we read about it in the news and whatnot. It becomes quite popular in an infamous way. But I'm pretty sure they have those statistics. Last but not least, I believe they knew. I've already read that. I guess they knew that she was lying. They knew she was lying, but they had to come up with their own logical story and purpose on what really happened. That's what I think the book is probably going to to head towards, as far as law enforcement is concerned. And that's all I have to say. And thanks for listening.
All righty, our privileged black male retired firefighter. Now, they told you, or she told you, there's a black dude with a gun. Now, how many mothers gonna sit there, somebody got, gun in your face and say, get out of the car. I'm not getting out the car. I'm gonna fight. Put him up. And she told you, see, Leroy was armed and menacing and rapist. He said, get out of the car. She said, what? He said, get out of the car. I'll shoot you. So she got out of the car, see? Let's see. Much obliged, retired firefighter. I just learned about the Adam Walsh case myself, and we read all about Jeff Dahmer. I don't even remember it coming up when we read about Jeff Dahmer. So, let's see. The email number 1, our caller writes in, I remember this case. It piqued my interest due to the accusation that it was the proverbial black dude perpetrator. I think suspected racists have done an excellent job of conditioning me to react in a collective sense and internalize events emotionally when a black person is accused, to the point that I feel as if I am somehow partially responsible for the crime. I think that's black people in particular, and especially black males. Like I said, there were so many black males. They were personally impacted. They came on my job. Got to talk to you, Leroy. I told you, other black men said, "Whoa, I can't go out and do no fishing." Whoa, no. I mean, and like I said, can you imagine? They said it took them about 10 days before they got a confession and charged Susan Smith. So for 10 days, nigger male stole these 2 white children, carjacked a white woman. What? And O.J. done killed a white woman and a white man. Nigger males are running crazy. Super predators everywhere. Can you imagine for those 9 days you having the audacity to open your mouth and say, I don't believe Susan Smith? Right? And maybe O.J. didn't kill anybody? What black person is going to open up their mouth during those 9 days and say that? It'd probably be a whole lot of people classified as black be ready to beat you to death. Rough 9 days. Rough. Let's see. I think sometimes it causes a visceral feeling in me. I don't know, maybe I'm not articulating this well. I recall pretty early on when it was determined that this awful woman committed this heinous act, I lost interest. Chapter 5. Susan received the letter 4 days after her divorce papers were filed. She was furious and let him know it. Tom was taken aback. Sweet, soft-spoken Susan. Tom Finley knew for sure he'd made the right decision. Just like Mary Kay, if she does not get her way. I thought that too. Because the whole, I'm going to use the children or the pregnancy in a manipulative way. Like we heard this before. I mean, the many components of this we've heard already. Many times, or even drowning children in the lake. Yes, we've heard it all before. Nothing new under the sun, as they say. Chapter 6. In the face of tragedy, the people of Union should turn to God and each other. Is hardly surprising. Community built on faith and fellowship. The city and county of Union got its name from the old Union Church. The first white settlers came to Union from Virginia in 1749. 1763, the start of the Revolutionary Wars, saw the greatest migration into Union. No mention of population dislocation or indigenous people. No mention of the enslavement of African people. Interesting. Absolutely. 2. The city of Union is known as the city of hospitality. Signs boast of the friendliness of its residents. World War I, Union County won national acclaim as the only county in the United States that did not have a military draft. 200 people gathered in the city of Union in South Carolina to learn about the racial terrorism in their county, to memorialize the black men, women, and children who were lynched between 1865 and 1950. I'm not in for the historical markers, generally speaking, because, they come and use them for target practice sometimes, and how many markers for murdered black people are we going to put down? 3. Jail, which is no longer used. It was designed by Robert Mills, South Carolina native, known for designing the Washington Monument. The jail was the site of the 1871 jail raid massacre and resulted in the hanging or shooting of 12 black males. Privileged. They were state militia members who were accused of killing a white man while he was illegally transporting bootleg whiskey. Historical marker dedicated in Union County. Book club that we read, Ben Tillman, Reconstruction of White Supremacy. The text does not discuss this event, but provides a lot of information on South Carolina during this time period. The Washington Monument began construction in 1854 with enslaved Africans as laborers and ended in 1854 due to lack of funds. The construction resumed in 1877 and finished in 1888. Since construction resumed after emancipation, the end of the Civil War, I presume subsequent workers were classified as white because they were paid, but I am not sure of this. 4. The South Carolina office of the Adam Walsh Center was one of 4 such organizations that grew out of the July 1981 disappearance of Adam Walsh. This is the case which prompted the development of the TV show America's Most Wanted, which was hosted by Adam Walsh. In 2008, convicted serial killer Otis Toole was declared the killer of Adam Walsh. However, there was no DNA evidence because police inexplicably lost Toole's impounded car and blood-stained carpeting, hindering the investigation. We certainly have read a lot about incompetent enforcement officials in the book club. Facts. 7. It was the first step in what would become a massive media campaign to find the boys. W.I.S., a local Columbia NBC affiliate, to produce a 30-second public service announcement about the missing children. Adam Walsh Groups and the Poly Class Foundation in Petaluma, California. She called paper companies to persuade them to donate paper to union businessman Mike Stevens, printing up more than 50,000 flyers and pictures of the Smith boys at no cost. Fascinating how many resources suspected racists can marshal in a very short time when they are motivated. Now that right there, on so many levels, like one, it'll be so frequently, oh, we don't have the money. Oh, we can't afford to do. Oh, that's going to take up too much. Oh, that's going to drop of a dime. They got people out on horseback, flyers printed up, people flying from all over the country. Drop of a dime. Let's get it. Let's get it. Let's get it. All of that. It's not tons of non-white people go missing. We talked about that for a long time. Who made flyers for Sade Robinson? Hashtags, any of that. Come on. And we had other folks who noted that as well in terms of wasting, and even Susan Smith wasting time and energy. All of this, even if it was, I want to, I don't like the husband I got now, so I want a different husband and all that. Wasting time. I'm going to go out and lie, and all these search parties and helicopters and man hours and all that. Paper, trees cut down, wasting all that time and energy for what? And the racism of it all. Let's see. Maybe I can get to my notes, and then we can push off to the second audio installment. If other folks have audio or commentary, *61. Don't wait till we get ready to transition to the audio. Let's see. Going back to chapter 5. Let's see. I thought the same thing some of you all pointed out, that the author tells us, the author, a white woman, I think, tells us that Mary Kay doted on her children, and she gives all these lame examples. I mean, she killed them. So she couldn't have been that great of a mom. I don't care how many, pictures you put. Same thing with Mary Kay, because she probably has a pretty impressive photo album of her mulatto children with Bealey and her white children. That does not make her a good mom. Not even close. And I mean, with Susan, she killed them. So, let's see. The cronyism, J. Carey Finley, where that Susan, she wants to get with Tom Finley, allegedly, and is bummed because he's, kicked her to the curb. The cronyism, where Tom Finley, he's not hard working and, hey, I, pulled myself up by my bootstraps. No. This isn't even cronyism. My dad, nepotism. My dad owned the company, so, I didn't move up the ladder. I just, hey, pick a job, and, this is the one I picked. Salary, benefits, company car, all that. Did you graduate from Clemson? No. Dad said, just try to stay awake in class. And some days I did, and but I'm here now. Company car is nice too, boy. Got them seats that cool you off. Let's see. And that word love, say Susan fell in love with Tom Finley. That kind of, what? All these affairs and messing around and love. No. I'm not. I reject that totally. That she was smitten, infatuated. She liked him for 30 seconds. Okay. Love, nah, we didn't slip right back into Mary Kay there too. Let's see. Oh, when they said Tom, he would invite Susan over to visit him at his cottage on his father's estate. See all the nepotism. I don't even have my own property. And attended one of Tom's well-known hot tub parties. What in the freak off? What? Like, I can't. That's what I said. Like, don't be telling me no love. If they having freak offs down there and stuff, that ain't no love either. That ain't no, hey man, we done got the baby oil and the hot tub and everything, and you was talking about you don't want to have children. I don't want to have no children either. I like the freak off. Let's come on. We work it out. Come on. That ain't no loving, doting parent either. And then it said they both went to the executive party in the summer of 1994. I don't know what that means. Is that like the white party that Diddy would throw? What's the executive party? They just went together as an item, got drinks with co-workers? What does that mean? Let's see. They got to brag. They said that now Union has all of these public bed and breakfast establishments that have their origins in slavery. I think some of the listeners wrote in and talked about how, dang, they no mention of the slaughter of the so-called Native Americans, no mention of having all these torture, terrorism against Negroes. Denmark, Vesey, we don't talk about none of that for South Carolina. None of that matters. But we got the slave plantations. Oh, we just kind of fast forward, give you the rough etches of our South Carolina state history. The Sheriff Wells' wife, Wanda, white woman I suspect, said that she worked at the Union Federal Savings Bank, where she worked for 19 years and been promoted to Assistant Vice President and Director of Human Resources. Where's the sexism? Where's the patriarchy? This is 30 years ago. How did a girl get promoted and president of the... I thought they said that, man, these old no-count sexist patriarchal white men's, they just mess us over, you see? They just mess us over. Us being Leroy and the white women and Lakeisha, and they just met. No. Leroy, they'll maybe let you be the custodian, not know. 19 years, I'm assistant vice president. They don't do that for Leroy at the bank. Got a whole book about that I just told you. The White Wall. Leroy can't even get his check cashed in South Carolina. And matter of fact, since it was mentioned that we talked about South Carolina before, Essie Mae Washington Williams, she made a point of all of the unemployed and down and out black males in South Carolina. She made a point of that, and I noted it. And now we come back to South Carolina for this. Essie Mae, she didn't say Strom Thurmond. She didn't say black people were down and out. She said black dudes specifically. In the archives, dear Senator, excuse me. Let's see. Witnesses making mistakes, where the officer spoke with Rick Jr. and he insisted that she was wearing a shirt that said Clemson. It did not, and that's probably some of that local or regional bias because Clemson is right there. She was wearing an Auburn shirt. Auburn is much further away. I'm sure they do see people with Auburn sweatshirts, but I mean, if you're in South Carolina, you will be inundated with Clemson paraphernalia. So he just, and I think they have similar colors, Auburn and Clemson. It's both orange, might even be both orange and blue. So it's very close colors. So I could see how the brain would just, it said Clemson. Yep, Clemson absolutely win. No, it did not. Auburn. Let's see. I don't know why, but his mutilated body was not discovered. His severed head was discovered. There's a difference, unless I'm mistaken. Let me get to chapter 7. See anything that I need. Well, matter of fact, we will pause there. If you have thoughts you did not get to share, save them. We will resume once we finish up with audio segment 2, Maria Eftimiades, The Sins of the Mother. Katherine Massey Book Club, audio segment number 2.
Inside the office of Sheriff Howard Wells, the investigation was continuing at top speed. Early Thursday morning, Wells appeared on the Today Show and later in the day on Larry King Live. We are going to look at everything and rule out nothing until we can do it with evidence, he said on Today. He told the nation that his office had received more than 1,000 calls, but so far they had no strong leads to follow. Very rarely do you have a crime and not have a crime scene to work, he told the press. I've been in law enforcement 20 years, and I've never had a case where there is so little to work on. Meanwhile, Divers divided their time between searching a canal in Lockhart and scouring the bottom of John D. Long Lake. They spent hours in the murky waters, but found nothing. Experts had made a considerable error. They assumed that anyone trying to get rid of a car would drive it into the water fast. No one considered that the driver of the Mazda would let it simply roll from the edge of the banks. Although it would be easy to imagine that a car driven into a body of water at high speed would go out further than a car driven slowly, in reality, the opposite is true. The faster the car hits the water, the more waves it creates, stopping the forward momentum. A car driven fast into a lake would simply drop and sink right there at the edge. But the Mazda had simply rolled into the water, and as a result, had drifted out much further than anyone anticipated, nearly 100 feet. While the divers searched the edges of the lake, the Mazda remained hidden from their view in the murky waters, the dreadful resting place for the bodies of Susan and David Smith's children. 2 days after the alleged carjacking, investigators were presented with an important development in the mystery of what had happened to Michael and Alex Smith. Both David and Susan Smith submitted to polygraph tests administered by the FBI. David's test showed no signs that he knew anything about the disappearance of his sons, but Susan's test proved inconclusive. One thing was certain. She showed the greatest level of deception when asked the question, "Do you know where your children are?" The investigators did not hide the test results from Susan. Concerned, Susan told David that she thought she had not done well on the test. She wasn't sure she'd failed, she told him, but she said she thought perhaps the police were beginning to doubt her story. Susan didn't have to ask David if he believed her. He did. But Wells and the other agents were far more skeptical. Investigators confronted Susan with the discrepancies in her story. On Tuesday night, when she was near hysterics, she had told Wells about the red light and how the black man jumped in the car. There had been no one around, Susan said, not a single car on the road. But the investigators knew differently. The light at the Monarch intersection is permanently green, unless a car on the cross street triggers the signal to switch. If there had been no other cars around, the light would not have been red. And there was another inconsistency. When asked where she had been heading when she was carjacked, Susan said she was on her way to visit Mitchell Sinclair, the fiancé of her best friend, Donna Garner. Mitchell lived less than a mile north of the Monarch intersection, in a rambling old house left to him by his grandmother. But Susan was told gently investigators had spoken to Mitchell, and he hadn't been expecting her. In fact, it was unlikely he had been expecting anyone. The house, investigators discovered, was a mess. Besides, that Tuesday at 9 p.m., Mitchell wasn't even home. Something else was nagging at the men interrogating Susan. Where was she in the hours before 9? Susan had the answer ready. She'd taken the children shopping at Walmart. They'd strolled through the store for quite a while, actually. But a short time later, that story collapsed. Sled agents told Susan that investigators had canvassed Walmart, talking to many people who were working or shopping that night. No one remembered seeing her or her 2 little boys. Susan thought a moment, and then responded. She wasn't really at Walmart, she explained. She'd actually just been driving for hours with the boys in the back seat. She hadn't said anything earlier, she told them, because she was afraid it might sound suspicious. The investigators listened with growing concerns. By now, Sheriff Wells was heading up the investigation, searching for the car and the children, and meeting daily with the sled team. The interrogation of Susan Smith had been taken over by behavioral specialist David Caldwell and investigator Lansing Pete Logan, both seasoned sled agents. But Howard Wells knew he needed to continue a parallel investigation into Susan Smith. It was simply good police work. The summer before Susan Smith made headlines, Wells had gone to the FBI's National Academy at Quantico, Virginia, earning 15 college credits and finishing first in his class. He also attended the National Sheriff's Institute's Executive Development Program. He was elected class president and finished at the top of the class. Although at times it seemed the entire nation was searching for Michael and Alex Smith, Wells's investigation was proving frustrating. A Salisbury, North Carolina convenience store was robbed by a black man in a car with South Carolina plates, but no children were seen in the car. By Friday morning, a Maryland fugitive had been arrested. Later, about 200 people combed the Uwharrie National Forest in Rowan, Davidson, Stanley, and Montgomery counties in North Carolina after a deer hunter reported hearing a child's cries. Nothing was found. The sheriff's instincts were sharp, but even as he continued to wade through tips and leads flowing through his office, Howard Wells suspected that the greatest source of information on the whereabouts of Michael and Alex Smith was the pretty young woman seated in his office. As sure as Wells was that Susan had information she wasn't revealing, David Smith was certain his wife was the victim. He became annoyed that the sheriff's department continuously asked Susan to meet with investigators. He couldn't understand why they were wasting precious time talking to Susan. She'd said all she knew. David couldn't stop thinking about his boys. He kept replaying his last Sunday visit with Michael and Alex. He'd seen them for 7 hours that day. They hadn't gone anywhere. They'd just stayed in his apartment and played. He'd gotten some wooden blocks, and he and Michael had stacked them higher and higher, and then Alex would toddle over and knock them down. How they laughed, his Alex and Michael. When Susan had arrived to pick up the children, David had hugged and kissed his sons goodbye. At the last minute, he had decided to walk them all down to Susan's car. That was the last time he saw them, as they drove away in the back seat of their mother's Mazda protege. 8. The doubts about Susan's story hit the front page of the Union Daily Times on Saturday, October 29th. Quoting unnamed sources, the paper reported that Susan's lie detector test had raised the possibility that she was not telling the truth about the disappearance of her children. The story pointed out that Mitchell Sinclair had not been expecting Susan the night of the carjacking, that no one had seen her at Walmart, and that she now maintained she had been driving aimlessly in the hours before she was carjacked. In some ways, the front page report merely echoed the doubts many already harbored, but hesitated to express. Some who had spoken to Susan in the days following the alleged carjacking had been disturbed by her odd demeanor. One woman who knew Susan well called several times to offer her prayers. Each time, after they talked for a few minutes, Susan would end the conversation saying, "I'll always cherish the memories of my babies." Susan's reluctance to speak publicly to raise awareness of the missing children fueled talk that something was amiss. On the few occasions Susan did appear on camera to talk about the carjacking, many who knew her felt something was wrong. During one of her early television appearances, Susan told how the carjacker had pushed her out of the car. She recalled her last words to Michael. He said, "Mama, where are you going?" And I told him, "Baby, I've got to go, but you're going to be okay." She said she had yelled, "I love y'all," to her sons as the Mazda sped off. "I just feel hopeless," she told reporters, sniffling. "I can't do enough. My children wanted me. They needed me. And now I can't help them. I just feel like such a failure." Dodd Frost was one of the early skeptics of Susan's story. The Smiths' neighbor knew what it was like to lose 2 boys. Once, Dot Frost had had 4 children, 3 boys and a daughter. Their school pictures lined the walls of her living room, dozens of photos of all 4 at all ages. Joey died first. It was Mother's Day, 1974. He was 27. Joey had just had surgery on his shoulder to remove a cancerous mole. He had bought a boat and gone fishing with friends in Lake Murray near Columbia. When they returned to the shore, the boat drifted away, and Joey dove in to retrieve it. His shoulder ached, and he suddenly realized he didn't have enough strength in his arm to be able to swim or even hold on to the boat. He drowned just off the shore. 2 years later, Danny died of leukemia. He was just 15. The ache in a mother's heart does not heal, Dot knows. And in the days after Susan Smith's little boys were supposed to have been kidnapped, Dot watched Susan's eyes, and she shook her head. She doesn't shed tears like I did when I lost my boys, she thought. The tears, they came down, these tears of Susan's. I have a feeling those are crocodile tears. There was more. Dot's son Scott told her he was sure he saw Susan's car pull out sometime between 8:15 and 8:30, the night of October 25th. He said he was watching television and got up during a commercial. The front door of the house was open, and Scott noticed Susan's Mazda backing out of the driveway. When Susan's early statements about going to Walmart or driving for hours were reported in the local news media, Scott Frost was taken aback. Ma, she couldn't have gone to Walmart or rode around, he had told his mother. I saw her. No way. The Frosts didn't advertise their suspicions, but when a sled investigator, who'd been camped out in front of Susan and David's house for 3 days, showed up one afternoon and asked about the last time they'd seen Susan, Dot told him about the porch light and what her son had seen. The investigator jotted down what she said. As he left, he suggested she not discuss what they talked about to the press. Best thing, don't talk to anybody, he said. Dot shrugged. She didn't think her opinions were all that important anyway, but she didn't like being told what to do with them. She called after the investigator. If I had my way, I'd open up that garage and search that house. You ain't done anything. You ain't even searched the house. The investigator kept walking to his car. He didn't respond. Later, when a local news reporter knocked at her door, Dot Frost decided she had every right to express her feelings. When he asked if she believed Susan, she told him the truth. It's like fishy, she said. It looks suspicious. That night, Dot got an anonymous phone call. I hope you rot in hell, the caller snapped, and slammed down the phone. Susan's childhood friend, Stacy Hartley, also harbored doubts about Susan's story. She remembered how, as a child, Susan had sobbed when she lost her dog. Watching Susan on the news, Stacy was bewildered. Something's not right, she thought. She's not telling the truth about something. She knows something. But what would be her motive? Stacy wondered. Susan knew she was going to have custody of the children. It wasn't as if there was a fight over it. Stacy came up with the only possibility that made sense. Maybe she's doing this to get back at David, she thought. In any case, Stacy felt sure that the children were safe. She just hid those kids somewhere, she decided. She's gotten somebody to keep those kids for her. After the Union paper broke the news of investigators' doubts, television reports began suggesting the carjacking story was a hoax as well. One night at the Russells, Susan watched a TV news broadcast and slammed her hand down on the side of an armchair. How could they say I'd hurt my babies? She snapped. From early on, members of the media were clearly skeptical about Susan's story. Again and again, reporters implored the family for interviews. Those who had covered other cases of missing children were astonished by Susan's refusal to speak to the press. Most parents will do anything if they believe there is any chance at all it might help bring their children home. Dozens of reporters camped out in front of the Russell home, pouncing on anyone who walked in or out. Family members, friends, and ministers bore the brunt of the attention. Most ignored the microphones and the questions shouted as they hurried up the walkway. As the family's liaison with the media, Margaret Frierson found herself bombarded by frustrated reporters as she traveled in and out of the Russell home. "Why aren't they coming out of the house?" they asked her repeatedly. "Why won't they talk to us?" Margaret refused to speculate. "It's my role to be a child advocate. I'm not an investigator," she kept saying. "The investigators are doing their job. My job is to let America know that these 2 little boys are missing. I've stayed focused on that. We're not there to solve the crime." But Frierson, too, was concerned. She firmly believed it would be beneficial for the Smiths to publicly speak out for their children, and so she approached Margaret Gregory, the wife of David's cousin, whom the family had asked to serve as a spokesperson. Gregory met twice daily with Susan and David, discussing the various requests for interviews. Now and then, the family would issue a written statement, but almost all requests for face-to-face interviews were turned down. Gregory told Frierson that Susan was simply not up to talking to the press. Frierson suggested someone else go in her place. "If you all can't do it, how about another family member?" Margaret said. "I'll leave it up to you." Despite her personal feelings, Margaret Frierson wanted the decision to be Susan's and David's. She knew from experience that missing children cases bring enough anxiety. If going in front of the media intensifies that anxiety, she won't ask a parent to do it. She knew she could continue to encourage the couple to talk, but with such enormous attention focused on the Russell home these days, Frierson decided the best route for her would be to continue to work through Margaret Gregory. Even so, there were inevitable clashes between the anxious family and the media pursuing what had become one of the biggest stories of the year. Margaret Gregory demanded that reporters stay off the Russell property. When some got too aggressive, she often reminded them that no one was getting an exclusive. "If they come out," she told them, "everybody's going to get their chance. We're not going to show favoritism." If anyone was a staunch supporter of Susan Smith, it was Shirley MacLeod. Ever since the night of October 25th, reporters had hounded the MacLeod family, stopping by the house at all hours, calling her at work, showing up on the grounds of Lockhart High School, where Rick Jr. taught grades 9 through 11. Early on, Shirley gave one interview to a Rock Hill Herald Journal reporter. She had turned him down several times, but the reporter persisted, and Shirley finally agreed. She set guidelines from the start. "I do not want to be misquoted," she told him firmly. "I do not. If you misquote me in any way, you will hear from me. Do not misquote me." He didn't. Still, Shirley hoped the focus on her little house and her family would end. She did not want to be a part of this story. She wanted only one thing: for the sheriff's office to find those little boys and bring them home. Shirley had seen the agony in Susan Smith that terrible night. She could still hear the young girl's tortured cries, how her entire body shook when she spoke. And so, when the reports began to surface that investigators were doubting Susan's story, Shirley was angry. That Saturday, 4 days after the alleged carjacking, Shirley spent the day with her sister, Iris, in Lockhart. They talked about Susan, as they had for days. Shirley's sister gingerly brought up a few sensitive issues. Iris thought it strange that Susan never called to thank Shirley for her help that night. "Don't you find that funny?" Iris asked. Shirley did not. After all, Susan was distraught, she said. How could she think of thanking anyone for anything when her precious babies were missing? When the suggestion was made that perhaps a family member might have made the call, Shirley dismissed it out of hand. There was more. Iris was not convinced by Susan's television appearances. "Something's just not right, Shirley," she said gently. "Something's just not right." Shirley snapped at her sister. "I don't care, Iris. What do you want her to do? Sob and cry and wail and scream every time they interview her? Don't you think they've given her something to help her? When Shirley returned home from her sister's home around 3 p.m. Saturday, November 3rd, a network news team was parked in her driveway. At first, Shirley told the reporter she was not interested. "I'm very private," she explained. "I don't want to be on TV." But the young woman didn't give up. She pointed out that many people were now saying they did not believe Susan Smith's story. Now was an opportunity, she told Shirley, for her to speak out in Susan's defense. Shirley mulled that over. If telling what happened that night and how she was reacting would help her, she thought, then she'd do that. The brief spot turned into a 5-minute segment on Good Morning America the following day. Joan London asked Shirley point blank if she believed Susan Smith. Shirley was adamant. "Personally, I don't believe she had anything to do with it," she said. And she meant it. There was another issue surrounding the disappearance of Susan Smith's children. Susan's claim that the carjacker was a black man. From the beginning, many in the black community found her story beyond credibility. A black man drives off with 2 white babies and has somehow escaped a sighting? Word traveling through Union's black community was mostly skeptical. That's how Gilliam Edwards felt. The 53-year-old mill worker had grown up in Union. In recent months, he'd undergone neck surgery and spent several weeks out of work. With time on his hands, he'd read all the newspaper stories and watched all the broadcasts about the Smith story. He had no idea what happened to Susan Smith's children, but one thing he felt certain about. No black man was responsible for their disappearance. He told his wife his feelings about Susan Smith's story. He argued about it with his older children. He talked about it on Main Street every day, where he is most comfortable. "I do my talking in the street," he often says. Gilliam stuck to his position. "No black person does something like that," he told whomever would listen. "We know we're 90% of the prison population. We've been 90% since 1776. We know when we go down to that prison for certain crimes, we going to be taken care of. It ain't going to be tomorrow. It going to be as soon as we get down there. One's bothering children, bothering old people, messing with the women. You're going to get it, that's all. Any black guy would have to be completely out of his mind to commit such a crime. You see me? Big old black guy with 2 white kids? No, no." Early on, Gilliam made up his mind that Susan Smith probably had the children hidden somewhere. "She carried those kids off," he told his friends. "She gave them to the in-laws or something." Still, it bothered him every time he saw the police sketch of the black man Susan claimed had stolen her sons. "It's embarrassing," he thought. "People looking at you like that. People on the street. One of our people. No way. No way." 9. It wasn't just Union's black community that was bothered by that composite of the alleged assailant. When cognitive graphic artist Jeannie Boylan first saw the crude image distributed by the SLED investigators, she knew at once that if Susan Smith really had been carjacked, a far more detailed drawing of the suspect would be key to apprehending a suspect. For the past 17 years, Jeannie has worked more than 7,000 cases, sketching the faces of child abductors and killers for law enforcement officials around the country. In one of her most prominent cases, Jeannie sketched the drawing of Richard Allen Davis, the man ultimately accused of the kidnapping and murder of 12-year-old Polly Klaas of Petaluma, California. In the early weeks of Polly's abduction, detectives had met with Polly's 2 friends, also 12 years old, and produced a crudely drawn image of the man they said had walked into the house and carried Polly off. The drawing was so unlike Davis that police who had encountered him the night of Polly's kidnapping insisted the man in the drawing could not be the man they saw. After Jeannie was called to help, she met with Polly's friends and sketched a strikingly detailed portrait of the young girl's abductor. When Richard Allen Davis was finally caught 9 weeks after Polly disappeared, the accuracy of Jeannie's drawing was astounding. In the past year, Jeannie stayed in touch with Polly's father, Mark Klass. Since the murder of his only child, Mark has given up his job as owner of a Hertz dealership in San Francisco to work full-time as an advocate for children. For a time, he served as a board member for the Polly Klass Foundation, the child advocacy group organized in honor of his daughter. Then, about a year after Polly's death, Mark formed his own organization, the Mark Klass Foundation for Children, to lobby for stronger laws to protect kids and keep violent, repeat offenders behind bars. He also meets with families who are suffering through the disappearance of a child. When the Susan Smith case broke, Mark and Jeannie teamed up again. Mark learned of the case first. He got a call from producers at the syndicated news magazine show, American Journal. Previously, Mark had reported 3 stories on missing children for the program. Now, producers hoped he would go to Union and report on Susan Smith and her missing babies. They sent him newspaper articles about the case and a copy of the composite of the suspect. Mark agreed to go. He then suggested they bring Jeannie Boylan in as well. Jeannie will be able to put a face on the guy, he told them. She can really help. The American Journal producers were enthusiastic about Mark's suggestion, and Mark quickly put in a call to Jeannie. The 41-year-old Boylan had just returned from working on a case in Wisconsin in which a 12-year-old girl, Cora Jones, had been murdered by a serial killer. That Thursday afternoon, October 27th, when Jeannie picked up the phone at her house in Bend, Oregon, Mark didn't waste any time. "Jeannie, it's Mark. What are you doing right now?" he said. Jeannie sighed. "Mark, I'm having one of the worst days of my life," she responded. Mark barely heard her. "We've got a case," he said, his voice serious. He went on to tell Jeannie what he knew about Susan Smith and the carjacking. He told her the composite drawing done by sled agents didn't look very promising. Jeannie said she'd get back to him quickly. She quickly called the Columbia, South Carolina office of the FBI. She found out the name of the head of the operation and faxed him a copy of her bio, listing the various cases she'd worked on. Jeannie had worked with the FBI numerous times before, and agents there were familiar with her work, but she was careful to follow protocol. She told the agent on the phone that she would not go to South Carolina without the FBI's knowledge and approval. She knew that despite her good intentions, it was important not to step on any toes. In a few minutes, she had her answer. The FBI had been trying to contact her. Charlie Shepard, who handled press relations for Jim Oppie, the FBI special agent in charge for South Carolina, had put in a call to the agency's San Francisco office, trying to locate Jeannie's phone number in Bend, Oregon. Still, Shepard warned Jeannie Boylan that she might want to hold off coming to Union until police had checked out a lead from North Carolina. Reports had just surfaced that a black man driving a car with South Carolina plates had robbed a convenience store in North Carolina. Authorities were checking to see if there was any connection to the Smith carjacking. "It might be premature," Shepard told Jeannie. "We've got a lead we're working on. You might want to wait until morning." Jeannie hesitated for a moment. She glanced at the clock. If she rushed, she might just make the last flight out of Redmond Airport, a 5:10 flight that connected to a red-eye from Portland to Charlotte, North Carolina. The airport was about 35 minutes from her home, and she needed to shower and pack. "I think I can make that last flight," Jeannie said. "I'd rather be there, in case your lead doesn't turn out to be anything." She hung up and hurried to pack. The phone rang again, almost immediately. "Are you going?" Mark Klass asked her anxiously. She told him she was. They agreed to meet at the Charlotte airport. Her flight from Oregon got in at 7:15 a.m., his at 7:30 a.m. When she arrived in Charlotte, Jeannie slipped into the ladies' room at the airport and changed into a Christian Dior black suit. It was her standard outfit for meeting with the FBI. She called it her every press conference boring suit. Jeannie hadn't quite worked out a good compromise on attire. She knew she had to present herself as a professional to the FBI agents. At the same time, in a crisis situation, she always felt it was less threatening if she dressed more casually for the family. When Mark's flight arrived, the two hugged at the gate. Jeannie worried about Mark. He looked exhausted. Dressed in an old purple sweatsuit, he had dark circles under his eyes. She knew what a difficult year it had been for him. First, losing his daughter, and then throwing himself on the front lines of the battle to keep repeat offenders behind bars, fighting politicians, other lobbies. In recent months, he'd even found himself at odds with the other members of the board of directors of the Poly Class Foundation over his aggressive direction. As word of the internal squabbling had leaked out, Mark had taken a beating in the press. Some thought he was too much a showman, that perhaps his motives were less than genuine. Jeannie knew differently. Seeing him at the gate, she felt a strong bond with him. She thought about how emotionally charged a missing child case is, and how friendships that develop in the midst of one are so strong and so pure. For the next hour and a half, as their chauffeured town car headed south to Union, Mark and Jeannie caught up on each other's lives. Jeannie told Mark about the Cora Jones case in Wisconsin, and he listened sympathetically. It reminded Jeannie of the time when she and Mark learned of a 12-year-old Midwestern girl who had been found murdered right around the time Polly was taken from her home. Jeannie remembered how Mark had reacted, slamming his hand against the wall. "Jesus Christ," he exploded. 12 years old is such a dangerous age in this country. Mark told Jeannie about his campaign for a revised version of California's 3 Strikes and You're Out law. He told her that he had originally backed the bill because he was led to believe it would put violent 3-time felons in jail for life. But, Mark told Jeannie, the bill signed by Governor Pete Wilson targeted 3-time felons, regardless of whether their crimes were violent or not. It wasn't what was needed, Mark complained. It would only overflow the prison population and cost taxpayers astronomical sums. As they approached Union, they began to discuss the Susan Smith case. By now, Jeannie had seen the composite drawing of the alleged suspect in the carjacking. She could hardly believe how crudely it would be drawn. The single most important thing is that image has got to be right, she told Mark, who nodded emphatically. The investigators have limited resources. This composite looks as if it's somebody under a dim streetlight from 50 feet away. There's no detail at all. You could say this is a man sitting very passively, as if he's on a Greyhound bus trip. No detail. It's a smudge with a hat on it.
They say the devil is in the detail. Katherine Massey Book Club, Context of White Supremacy. Them 3 strikes and you're outlaws. They're not for child rapists and child molesters. Black brother said, "Hey, Gus T, we reading about Mary Kay at the exact time that they getting on President Trump and everybody about give us them Epstein files, man. Who are the people that were in cahoots with him? How many people, how many children did you all rape?" Say, wow, you reading it at this? That would count for this too, right? I said, see, that's such a strong, compelling, necessary aspect of white culture. We could have read this and or Mary Kay any time, and it would have been prescient. White culture. Boy Scouts, they just had a massive settlement with the Catholic Church in New Orleans. So, anytime is the right time. Number to dial, 720-716-7300. The code 564-943 #. Press *6 1. If you would like to participate, the email untiljustice@gmail.com. Don't wait till the last moment if you have commentary to share. Email number 2. I've been listening in, but haven't been able to call or write in for a while. I remember this case, and I've seen numerous true crime series about Susan Smith. I remember thinking she was faking because of the lack of tears. I didn't follow the case so far as to know that her motive was running off to be with some man. The sketch artist's description of the black male who took her child always resembled a character from the Bill Cosby show when they were in the junkyard. I could fall out because I never thought of that, and it's been eons since I've seen the images associated with no count child, or not child, well, the Quaaludes and Bill Cosby, anyway. But, oh my God, yes. In fact, you have to put them up side by side, especially if you get a profile shot. Oh, man. Matter of fact, where was you at, Bill? William? Where was you at during all this? You carjacked anybody? You got any shows in South Carolina? Susan didn't want to die. She wanted to get rid of those children and start over. Had she just packed it up and skipped town without lying, she may have gotten away with it for many years. That part, I suspect, is true. If she had just dipped, got those children, told Dave, we're divorced, I'm dipping, we're leaving town, you messed everything up, and we're going to get a brand new start, and, we'll talk to you whenever. Man, it would have taken them so long to find that car. She could have got such a massive, head start, and it's not like they had cell phones everywhere at that time period, and iPhones and social media and all that. She could have dipped. She could have went someplace, some rinky-dink town, changed her name, got a wig, went about her life, had all her sexual, trysts and such, and maybe some years later, they find the car, and even then, she would have just been a person of interest. It wouldn't have been, because she could have, then after they come and track her down, then she could be, dude, what? Oh my Lord, we were carjacked. I got amnesia. I don't even know how I ended up. Where are we at? Oregon? How did I get in Oregon? Yeah, they slave trade. you'd have a long time. She'd have time to figure out her story as to what happened, how the car and the children got in the lake. But, oh yeah, it would, come on. Let's see. That's email number 2. We'll get the rest of them as we proceed. Folks who dialed in, if you have commentary to share, line should be open, *61. If we missed you first time around, do not wait till the last moment. Go ahead and get your hand up now. Retired firefighter, Mr. Douglas, our female caller, all should be with us.
And I'll go ahead and go. Can I be heard?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Oh, Susan Smith, boy, I'll tell you. In her description of the black, I think they said something about generic. So I was thinking, what does a generic black person look like? Yeah, guys, just a real, I can't really say much about her but that. And, she brought the black man in. The black man did it, guys. He was black. Got people around there scared. That man, said, we know what they do. We know what they do. When you do something like that and you go to the penitentiary, when you go to jail, we know what they do. So, we're not really into nothing like that. I'm just grateful to be reading it with you all this evening, and I'm my line.
Looked like any old black person. Any black. They said for years they've said black people look alike. So a number of people pointed that out from the sketch, that this was just any old black dude. And they even had a black person who worked, a black male who worked for the police department in South Carolina. And he said, you look at that sketch, this one, it took them 10 days before they got her to confess. And they still didn't have the car. It took her to confess and, tell everything for them to get the car. They said, man, you look at that sketch. Okay, Leroy, toboggan, that's the tight winter knit cap. Leroy in a toboggan. He said, you just go out and see anyone. Say, oh, wait a minute, is that? Hey, come here. I told you they got black dudes that came on my jobs. Wait, look like you. Come on. Black male. And again now, middle of the OJ. If they don't mention Orenthal James in this book, oh my, this is like a C, mandatory. Like it's a 2-letter grade deduction immediately. Like if O.J. Simpson is not mandatory, if O.J. Simpson is not mentioned, how? It's so ubiquitous. There are news reports. They want Susan Smith. We're trying to get the jury together. Maybe we can get the trial moved. Oh my God, it was heinous what she did to them children. And they finished that and said, now back to that no-count scoundrel O.J. Simpson. Trial starts at the beginning of the year. You know he did it. What? Wait a minute. Other folks who dialed in with a hand up, proceed. Matter of fact,
Mr. Renegade.
I'm so sorry, Mr. Douglas. Just for context, yes, I'm a heathen and a coon. This case just happened after they had darkened up Orenthal. That was the front of Time magazine where they had to apologize. Our bad. We did make him look more melanated than he is. This just happened. And then we get the extra black OJ. And then Sue, the black dude, still an extra black. And they put this picture up. This picture had just come out after the extra blackened OJ. For context. I'm sorry, Mr. Douglas. I'll try not to be a heathen.
No, well, that's very interesting that you mentioned that. That does give it context. My goodness, I remember some folks, some of the adults, in my attempted family, they thought the person didn't look like the sketch did not look like a real person. It was always interesting that the one person who wrote in talked about how it resembled one of the Cosby kids from the Fat Albert show. That's really interesting. I don't really have a lot to say this time around. No snitching is really a core element of white supremacy racism. I mean, I think that was echoed in the Mary Kay book, and then also in this one for the one woman to have spoken with the reporters, the Dot, and then for her to get an anonymous phone call, chastising her for having done that. That's really something. The resources of white people, again, I mean, this Jean Boylan, her expert sketch artist, and was able to, they were searching her out, and, she calls them, and they send her on her way to go and do that. I mean, just resources of the things that they could do if they valued it. And unfortunately, non-white people are not valued. Shout out to my black brother, Gilliam Edwards, reading the newspaper following that case, staying abreast of it, and he's a very bold man to go out speaking in public like he was. But that's all I have. Thank you.
They have video footage of him at the time going out and giving his views. A privileged black male, Mr. Gilliam. I'll have to include some of that. Maybe next week I'll include, since I've been talking about the different black males that they talk to about all this. I'll include some of that next week so we can hear from Mr. Gilliam directly. And I think they have video of some of the things that were written in the book. They have his neck brace and everything. He's extra privileged black male. The character from Fat Albert, incidentally, with the hat on, toboggan style, is Dumb Donald. Privileged black male. I'll post his picture side by side with the sketch artist for the carjacking black males so you can see, if they look. Woo, man. Retired firefighter. What? Yes, retired firefighter in Florida. Did you have commentary for the second portion of the reading?
Well, very, very brief. They had already caught her in 2 lies, very significant lies about her whereabouts. And from the standpoint of the polygraph test, if they, have people to take that test and it registers on her like it did, it must be some reason on why they would have people to take that test to write down that it's a big question mark on how she came out with that test. So I would suspect that law enforcement basically has turned the entire narrative of the crime on her, because with the drawing, as everybody is saying, as well as what the book is saying, that it doesn't register somebody who actually is alive. When it comes down to it, it's a typical drawing, probably something that a 7th grader can do of a black male that doesn't exist. So I would figure with law enforcement, she is the number 1 suspect in the murder of those 2 children, which happens to be came out of her. That's it.
Much obliged, retired firefighter in Florida. The sketch we heard, even in the audio segment that I started with today, the documentary, they talked about that sketch and how the local media said that they had questions, suspicions about the sketch because it was so, I think, generic, average. This could be anybody, if you put a hat on them. You heard a little bit of that in the introduction today. And then I got Dumb Donald. And that'll be paired next to the photo from the sketch artist. So you can see them side by side and see what they look like. It is... system of white supremacy racism. This is on. I'm going to put it on all my social media so you can see them together. Okay. *61 if you have commentary. Last few seconds. Let's see. Email number 3. I was also confused about Susan Smith's hair being described as light brown. It's dark brown, and she is also very average looking. Definitely not beauty queen status in my opinion. They said it this week again. This sweet, pretty girl, and oh my goodness. 2, I remember being fussed at by white people I worked with for bringing my daughter into the front office. This was during the lunch period, as the nursery that was on site did not look after children during lunch times. Susan Smith was allowed to have 2 children running around Winn-Dixie several times a week when she took them to see their father, sometimes to go curse him out because, "What, are you sleeping with that wench? I see you. I know you messing with that whore. Don't you be..." 3, It's very curious how much time the author spends trying to convince readers that Susan Smith was a great mother to the 2 children she murdered. It's all very superficial, given that she wanted rid of them so she could hook up with her new man. Facts. Glad many people have pointed that out. 4. Every morning, Susan shuffled the boys past the yellow "Beware of Kids" on the front door and kissed them goodbye. White people really don't like children. Facts. 5. On Sundays, Susan usually took her sons to church at Buffalo Methodist, attending the same service as her mother and stepfather. Is this the same stepfather who molested her? Is it, I think? Is it? Is it? Eep? Yikes. They made her? Well, what they told us last book, you just handle that privately and leave it alone. I have to double check though, but I think it might be. Yikes. 6. I think it's strange that people were listening to the police radios, particularly women, more fangirl behavior. Is that strange? Really? It's I don't have a police scanner or police radio, but I'm under the impression, particularly like before widespread Wi-Fi and iPhones and such, that many people in this part of the world listen to police scanners and police radios. I mean, I guess some of that you could say is fanboy, fangirl type behavior. The true crime, that we see now, absolutely precursor to all of that. Some of it, hey, you can be informed about everything that is happening in this is before you had news to the degree that we do now. And just, you can have, I mean, if you are into town gossip, oh man, you can hear all kinds of goodies. So, yeah, I'm under the impression that, I mean, you're talking about more of a radio era type thing before television came to be so singularly dominant, that, this was a kind of common, widespread practice, at least in this part of the world. Let's see. According to my AI chatbot, Union County, South Carolina was very likely a sundown town for much of the 20th century. Census data shows that Union County had only 1 black resident listed in both the 1950 and 1960 censuses, an extremely strong indicator of intentional racial exclusion and practices of typical of a sundown town or county. Yikes, that's crazy. That's especially crazy because James Lowen said most of these sundown towns are in northern locations, that white people kind of had a different way of operating the plantation in the South, so you didn't see as many of these sundown towns, although there were some. We talked about Texas, but wow, South Carolina, wow. Well, even I remember when they said that she got her exclusive house with Dave, I was thinking that's probably what it means. They got to go to a sundown town type area with no niggers. That would be especially something to brag about in South Carolina. But that is fascinating. If that is the case, like, woo, wow. Let's see. 8. A few miles away, the Russell household was teeming with activity. Susan and David had been staying with Bev and Linda Russell since the night of their son's disappearance. Bev Russell is the stepfather who molested Susan Smith, right? This is all very strange. Again, I think that would be him. Now, I'm going to have to double check, get my names correct, but I think that's him. Eep. White culture. I mean, him molesting her allegedly, I guess she said she told people as a child and nothing was done about it, so blah, blah, blah. Same thing we heard with Mary Kay. And maybe there wouldn't have been much to do about all this if she hadn't rolled those children into the lake. That only came up as a, hey, wait a minute now. I got problems. I've been molested, see? She maybe wouldn't have said all that if she hadn't, drowned the children. Much obliged. Let's see. Make sure I get in my commentary and finish up our last email, and we should be good to go. Compensatory call-in on Saturday. Something about that the sketch being described as a smudge almost seemed racial slur to a degree. Maybe not. Let's see. Rewinding, get myself back to chapter 7. Make sure I didn't miss anything there. I do appreciate, I don't think I grasped the widespread number of doubters that there were about Susan Smith immediately. Like Dr. Kamal Kamban, he's a Grandcester, but he was in North Carolina, so very close to all this in South Carolina. He said as soon as he heard all this, he said, she's lying. She's lying. You know, like the fellow who said, hey, the folks at the barbershop, they, Leroy don't want to take care of his children. I'm going to take 2 white children? Come on. Come on. Come on. I'm deadbeat. Deadbeat. You got to chase me down for child support. I'm taking somebody else. Come on. Come on. Come on. Beyond that, there were people in that. You heard in the news clip that I played. He said, look here, Dave, Susan, these going to be some tough questions. Here it go. Have you been honest about it? I mean, dang, I do not remember it being that flagrant where they were being asked before we even got and then they came back and asked Dave, like, do you believe your wife? Like, do what? I don't even remember. I remember the Gabby Petito case. We talked about John Benet Ramsey. I do not remember them asking a parent, do you think your spouse has been truthful about everything? Like, what? What? It was widespread folks who did not believe this, like almost immediately. And even some of those nosy white people on the police scanner just listening to the evidence like, hey, that's not even how that stoplight operates, man. Like, no. For that light to be red, it would have to be another car there, so somebody saw this, right? Did the black dude who did the carjack, did he drive up at the stoplight and then get out of the car and carjack you, so he left his car there? Like, what? Just asking questions and following logic. Let's see. 200 people combed the Uwharrie, I'm botching that, I'm sure, Uwharrie National Forest in Rowan, Davidson, Stanley, and Montgomery counties in North Carolina. I mean, that now again, I just said Dr. Kanban. Of course he heard about this. We got an invasion of 200 people to come search for white children who are already dead. Yes, I heard about all this, informed an opinion. And again, the resources white people can marshal for white children, and when they get serious about something, it's not recession, we don't have time, that's going to cost too much. 200 people, lickety split. We don't need no Facebook. We don't need no Discord. We don't need no iPhone. 200 people. Let's get it. What you need? Horses, MREs, compass, water bottles. What you need? We got it. T-shirts. We got it. Paper. What you need? Helicopters. What you need? Dredge the lake. What you need? Let's see. And they said, the greatest source of information on the whereabouts of Michael and Alex Smith was the pretty young woman seated in the office. She's got to be pretty, lovely, frail. Same thing, Mary Kay. Man, I wonder if we get a white woman that's 70, if we were reading about Carolyn Bryant Donham, even at 80 years old, they saying, the lovely, beautiful. And matter of fact, they did say that about Carolyn Bryant Donham at the trial. The Raven Beauty, Carolyn Bryant Donham, or she was just Carolyn Bryant at the time. So the Raven Beauty, Carolyn Bryant. That no count scoundrel imitative. Let's see. Chapter 8. See, I told you, retired firefighter up here talking fool talk, saying, ain't nobody gonna just hop out the car and you got your children. That's Opelika 3 logic. I told you, she said he had a gun and he pushed her out of the car. See? Because she was doing exactly what y'all said. No, you don't tell me to go. No, those my children. Alex, I love you. I love you. And yeah, winch, get out of the car. Yeah. He shoved out with the gun in her face. See? That sounds good. Yeah. Oh man, I love Dot. So Dot comes to, or I guess the police come to talk to her about her views, what she's seen, blah blah blah. She doesn't, whatever, I don't want to be part of the story and all that. And the officer tells her not to talk to the press. Uh-oh, we got the double whammy here. There's certainly no snitching. Shh. And then, white define. Now, this is an enforcement. It's an enforcement officer. You could be messing up the investigation. We're still trying to get evidence together. Like, come on. You don't tell. And that's almost what she said. You don't tell me what to do. You don't tell me what to do. In fact, I tell you what to do. Why don't you go search her house? Y'all sitting around here with your thumb up your butt. What's wrong with you coming around here and tell? Matter of fact, where's the bread? Let's go. Let's go. Right now. Right now. I think it's fishy. Darn tootin'. Matter of fact, I can even pause. I've said for some time, and I'm glad they included black people who were suspicious. Dr. Campbell, when I named Mr. Gillum. Man, I've said for years, frequently, white people are more suspicious of other white people than non-white people. That's a part of how we are victims, but that doesn't make it any better. Where I've said frequently, white people, they know white people practice racism. They know white people better than we do. They are not ignorant about racism. They are not ignorant about white people. I am so glad we are hearing, apparently, there were a number of white people who heard this and immediately, just based on, I say double, evidence and their understanding of white people. Oops. This is fishy. Or their understanding of Susan, because we heard from some people who, I know this wench. I went to school with her. This ain't right. This ain't, not, yep, niggers, Leroy and all that. I got it. This ain't right. And it turned out that was true. Let's see. But Dot said, you don't tell me what to do. Hey, I talk if I want to. Why? And didn't we just hear this with Mary Kay Letourneau, her friends and homies? They go to the prison. Don't take pictures. You don't tell me what to do. I got my social media ready to go. We were out here with Mary Kay Letourneau and everything. You don't tell me what to do. I'm not an inmate. I don't have no number stenciled on my chest. Get the iPhone. Get the iPhone. And then ran off when the officers pursued them. Dot said, you don't tell me to keep quiet. I'm going to talk if I want to. I'm going to talk about, I got freedom of, Charlie Kirk got freedom of speech. I got freedom of speech too. I'm going to talk if I want to. And she's suspicious too. See, it's fishy. Leroy stole it. It's fishy. Let's see. And then we caller did say, hey, no snitching. She said they called her. Hey. I hope you rot in hell. If anybody rot in hell, shouldn't it be Susan Smith? Now, Dot was a couple days early. They should have called back. My fault, Dot. My fault. My fault. I should have been using my brain computer. She got me with the Leroy thing. I bit it hook, line, my fault, Dot. My fault. I'm gonna send a letter up to the prison and Susan, you rotten hell, you no count white wench. That's what it should have been. No snitch. even look here. Even in a child murder, no snitching. And I guess that could have been a double. They called and threatened her on the phone, no snitching, and or we really like this white woman. You don't talk bad. And even that's kind of no snitching, because you're supposed to be on the white team. You don't talk bad about other white women. You don't come out here and talk about this white woman live. What's wrong with you? Either way, they should have owed her an apology. She called back, my fault. My fault. It seemed like I said they got Shirley came in and Iris, I think her sister, the McLeod woman, and saying that she didn't think that all this was accurate. Something isn't adding up about all of this. And she said about her not contacting her, I guess, after whatever. She, to thank her. I didn't find that strange either, because I would think you got a billion other things to do. But she said, Gavin DeBecker, the gift of fear. She had questions like, it's not adding up. I don't know. Maybe she should have called. Maybe she shouldn't have. I don't, but it's not adding up. Them pointing out the crying, all of it, it's not adding up. Let's see. Mr. Gillum using logic as well. He said, hey, we're 90% of the prison population. Negroes are not 90% of the South Carolina population, but we're 90%. And I mean, that is a lot of privileged black males. Whew. Man, put that on George Stinney. Black male privilege. What was my black brother Dylan Root? What was he upset about? Was it still that many high incarceration rate in South Carolina in 2015? Like, what was he all mad about? It can't. Most of the Leroy's in prison. What's the big deal? Walter Scott dead. What's the big deal? Roberta Clemente? Really? Let's see. He said, you see me with, and Mr. Gillum, like I said, he had that neck brace, so he would have really stood out if he'd had. In fact, that's one of the first guests we had on the program, black male. His mother-in-law, she was a foster care parent, and she got a white child, and he would take this white child out with his children, black, and people would look at him like, boy, you raping no count coon. What are you doing with that white girl? And she was like 6'2", really young. Ooh, we will kill you or call the police or nigger knock you or all three. Or where did you, are you kidnapped? What do you do? All the time. All the time. It's in the archives, one of the first programs that we did back October 2009. 16 years. He legally, I know this child. In fact, as I said, my mother-in-law got legal custody of her for the time being, temporary basis. Imagine I done stole not 1, 2 white children and carjacked a white woman. Like, are you out? What do you say? Well, Steve, are you out? I might as well just go ahead and, where do I strap myself in for the electric chair? With Chris, I ought to be wet, shouldn't I? Okay, the shackle, you put the sensors right here. Okay, do I need to shave my hair too? Let me go ahead and I'm ready. We can get on to it. We can skip the trial and all that. Let's get right to it. Y'all can do the electrocution or what they do. The shooting squad, how you do it? Injection, how you do it? Gas, what you do? Surprise me? Come on. Anything else? We can't get out of Wisconsin. I'm out of my mind. I'm out of my mind for so many reasons. We had got to Wisconsin. I was doing my research for this weekend. We had got to Wisconsin with this case anyway. And then to come back to Wisconsin for, I'd never heard of the Cora Jones case either. Murdered by a serial killer. What? Who? When? When did... The white people do not care about children, really. And I have to come back to Dr. Welsing. All of this just killing and killing and killing and killing for fun and making a game out of killing. And I was at the bookstore for the lecture earlier this week, and they had a book, and it had University of Washington alumnus Ted Bundy on the front cover, called Murderland. And I thought, Dr. Welsing, that is the system of white supremacy racism for a tiny minority of the population to dominate the universe. You have to have killing and killing and killing and killing of non-white people, and large amounts of killing. In fact, come to worship and revere killing. And killing and killing. What's the problem, or what's the solution? Killing and killing and kill. That's what was the first thing that come to mind? I don't need these children anymore because white people don't care about children. What do we value? Killing. What should I do with them? Kill them. Just get rid of them. That'll solve the problem. They'll be gone. Move on forward. Killing, and that's Columbine, worship and praise of kill. That's Dahmer, killing and killing, and that's why Dahmer celebrated that. We got all the movies and killing and killing and Murderland and killing and killing and killing. What does it mean to serial killer? And killing children. That's Jeff Dahmer, killing children. That's Columbine, killing children. That's the fella went and shot up the school in Minnesota. President Trump didn't mention that when he was giving his list of violence. The little fella that went and shot up the school in Minneapolis. I wanted to terrorize children. That's white culture. Back to Wisconsin. We will pick that up. Forgot. We will finish email number 1. We had so many folks writing about Susan Smith. Let's see, chapter 7. Susan's test proved inconclusive. One thing was certain: she showed the greatest level of deception when asked the question, "Do you know where your children are?" Polygraph tests have been discussed previously in the book club. Controversial to say the least. Lie detectors, why they don't work and why police use them anyway. Chapter 18. From the beginning, many in the black community found her story beyond credible. A black man drives off with 2 white babies and has somehow escaped a sighting. Word traveling through Union's black community was mostly skeptical. That's how Gilliam Edwards felt, showing a lot of self-respect. Fortunate that the actual suspect was determined quickly, avoided a lot of additional subjugation these victims were experiencing ordinarily. Chapter 8. The 41-year-old Boylan had just returned from working on a case in Wisconsin in which a 12-year-old girl, Cora Jones, had been murdered by a serial killer. The name of the serial killer was David Spanbauer, suspected racist white male. I'd never heard of him before. David Spanbauer. 2. Reports had just surfaced that a black man driving a car with South Carolina plates had robbed a convenience store in North Carolina. Authorities were checking to see if there were any connection to the Smith carjacking. Her lies could have gotten black males killed. Who knows? Maybe they did. 3. Mark. Jesus Christ, he exploded. 12 years old is such a dangerous age. More than family, clergy, or counselors. A person in a situation like Susan Smith's world want to see a person who knows what she's going through. That person was Mark Class. Mark told Gene about his campaign for a revised version of California's 3 Strikes and You're Outlaw. Mark Class set up a foundation which assisted in the search of missing children. Class Kids Foundation. It was in effect for 30 years. It fingerprinted 1 million children throughout the country and helped 1,500 families search for missing children and trained 1,600 search and rescue volunteers. The foundation ended operations in 2024, an example of the power and influence of being white. Facts. I will say about the 3 strikes law, he's saying that that's not really what we needed and all that again, and particularly because this was about, hey, we need to be more serious about punishing child rapists, Jeff Epstein, et al., Mary Kay Letourneau, et al. We need to be more serious about this, child rapists and child abusers and child killers, and instead of that, it's, hey, Leroy, 3 strikes. What? Wait a minute, that was not... Hey, back. 3 strikes. We're done. Tukey Williams, yeah, we're done. 3 strikes, we're done. Not playing around. No more niggers with attitudes. That. What about the child rape? We'll get to that later, maybe. And then blame it on Pete Wilson. No, man. System of white supremacy. Racism, because that's pretty widespread. Jeff Epstein, man. They don't take no... Jimmy Savile. Don't be talking about this as just a U.S. thing. We're not serious about prosecuting no child predators. Like, what? What? Mary Kay didn't rape nobody. Veely not no victim. Have to go down that road again. Maybe they say that here too. Alex and them, they not really victims. I don't think they're going to say that, but, hey. Let's see, did we miss anything? I'm sure that this case got some black males killed one way or another. It just, like I said, black dude said that they came and got him on his job to take him in. I'm sure he was not the only black person questioned. Black person might not have even robbed that convenience store in North Carolina, real talk. He could have been going to get groceries, going to make sure he had enough toilet paper. What? He got something white in the car. You stole those. Get over there. Say, what? Wait a minute. It's toilet paper. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. We're not even in South Carolina. I'm in North Carolina. I just came to get toilet paper. I paid for it. I got a receipt. That's white too. Oh no. Anyway, we'll wrap up next. We'll resume next Friday. Sins of the Mother. Tomorrow, compensatory call-in. White people are shooting up the school in Jefferson County, Colorado. Dion Prime. Dill. Reb, and I mean, they're shooting up the school in Jefferson County, Colorado, and that is like exactly Littleton. Columbine had the nerve to say this little white fella was radicalized. He wasn't radicalized. He was Columbineized. I can trademark that, right? Put that on T-shirts. So he done went to the shrines for Reb and Dill. You don't need to say he was radicalized. I agree. He could have been kicking it with Sue Klebold. Facts. You tell me he was radicalized and then I'm going to go shoot up the school in Colorado. Can't even say that with a straight. They got the same enforcement officers who were out there being cowards 25 years ago are the same people got to come out at the press conference now. Yes, it's somewhat similar to all those years. Yes. Same outfit, same everything. What does it mean to be white? And why do these events keep happening? Tomorrow, and certainly Mr. Kirk. Much obliged, hopefully worthy of your Friday evening. Sobriety would be best. We need high-functioning brain computers in the dangerous environment in which we live. Man, be alert. Anything could happen. You might be accused of anything. Remember Lucky? Remember Anthony brought it? You might be accused of anything. Want to be sober so you can think, make great decisions. Creator, we ask, remind us to stop saying not all white people are racist. Remind us to stop name-calling people classified as black. Stop gossiping. Stop producing throwaway offspring to be driven into a lake and drowned. Vontae! Did not forget you. Abigail, Sierra, Patrick. Lots of them. Lots of them. No more throwaway non-white children. Replace white supremacy with justice immediately. Cow signing out. Thanks all for tuning in.
Nigga, you so brainwashed. I'm a victim, brother. Problem. You're a victim. I'm a victim of 400 years of conditioning. Shut up. The man has programmed my conditioning. Even my conditioning has been conditioned.